And please join with me in a pledge of allegiance, a pledge to our flag. It's over here behind me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for the Star-Spangled Banner to be sung by the Timberlane Chamber Singers.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare above bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you, singers. Excellent job. Excellent. So the order of business is I'm going to read the meeting ground rules, then I'm going to ask the school board and the budget committee to introduce themselves, and then we'll move on to the warrant articles. Our meeting ground rules, you can see them, it's probably going to be on the screen. They're the same as last year, except all the COVID issues are taken out. Number 1, no smoking. Please turn off your cell phones or put them on silent. Number 2, each person will treat every other participant with courtesy and respect. Number 3, any voter who wishes to address this meeting will approach the microphone. There's microphones on all the aisles. Be recognized by the moderator, myself, and then state your name and address. And please, if you have a difficult name, could you spell it? Because the clerk needs to put it in the meeting minutes by law. 5, speakers shall remain at the microphone for answers to their questions. 6, all questions to the school board, budget committee, or any other official or meeting participants will be directed to the moderator. Each voter who desires to speak on an article will be given the chance to do so before any other voter is given a second opportunity to speak on the same issue. Maker of motions and seconds, again, please state your name and your address for the clerk. Moving on, number 9, only one amendment will be allowed on the floor at one time. No amendment to an amendment will be allowed. Such proposals will be dealt with as subsequent amendments after the first amendment has been voted upon. Amendments must be in writing and signed by the voter along with their printed name. I don't know where the sheets are for that, but if you need paper and have a motion to amend, let us know. 10, secret ballots must be requested by 5 voters in writing. It's not on the card, but those voters must be present. You can't have them sign and not be here. And signed by the voters, verified by the clerk, and made before the vote on an article. Challenges to any voice vote require 7 or more voters immediately after it is announced, who then may request a written ballot. This evening, I'm going to ask for voice vote first. If I cannot determine who's the winner, then we're going to ask you to raise your cards. All my assistant moderators will help count your cards. So first, voice vote. then cards if we think it's close. Number 12, Municipal Budget Act, a 10% limit, which will be explained if needed by the school board chair or our attorney if necessary. 13, reasonable discussions on both sides of a motion will be allowed before a call to question will be accepted by the moderator. A 2/3 vote is required for call to question. 14, any amendments of fiscal amounts must be stated in dollars. Percentage figures must be converted to dollar amounts. Upon appeal of any ruling by the moderator, a majority vote will prevail. All votes will initially be a hand count, then we'll go to, or a voice count, actually. Then we'll go to the cards. But first a voice, because we can speak nowadays. Number 17, Robert's Rules of Order will be used as a guide only. 18, at any time during the meeting, these rules may be altered by a majority vote. If I hear no objections to these standard rules that we've had for a number of years, from the floor, these rules will be adopted for the conduct of the meeting, subject to your change if needed later on. Yes, sir. State your name and address.
Ryan LeBrecq, 174 Main Street, Plastow, New Hampshire. The secret vote rules also allow for 7 participants to vote verbally, not just 5 by writing. 7 participants in the audience can join for secret ballot rules, so I'd like that to be part of the rules as well. Thank you.
If you let us check that. Brian, can you spell your last name for the clerk?
Labrecq.
Brian, I just checked, Brian, with our school attorney, and he confirmed what my thought was, that voice votes of the 7 are for the second thing. Challenge to any voice vote requires 7 more to announce. But for a secret ballot, he believes, and I believe, you need 5 written in writing. If you can tell us what the revised statute you might be referring to,
That's the right answer.
then he can check. But right now, he's looked and said it needs 5 written.
Well, I posted an article to Facebook from the New Hampshire Municipal Association that indicated 7 voice votes can also suffice for secret ballot. I don't have it immediately available, but if you give me a minute, I can bring it up.
Thank you for offering to pull up that article. I don't think it's necessary. The statute in question is RSA 40:4-A. It's very clear in the law that to request a secret ballot requires 5 or more voters who are present to make the request in writing. I believe the provision you're referring to is RSA 40:4-B, which is the process for questioning a vote, which requires in writing or orally that request to be made by 7 or more voters present.
Okay, so I can, if desired, 5 of us present here can write it down and bring it up.
Yes, and any vote can be questioned by 7 or more people orally, regardless of whether that original vote was done by secret ballot or other means. So there's a secret ballot, and then there's the process for questioning any vote. And there may be some confusion, but that's the process.
Hold just a second, please.
While you're looking, Mr. Levesque, the secret ballot request must be made before I call for a vote.
And that's Labrecq. Often mispronounced. So it says, after a vote has been taken and declared by the moderator, any 7 voters can orally request the vote to be taken again using a secret written ballot vote. So it's after the vote. That's all the stipulation you're saying?
Correct. The provision you're referring to is the questioning or challenging a vote provision, which can be done by 7 or more orally. So the initial request for a secret ballot vote is 5 in writing prior to the moderator calling the question. So I think that's it.
Okay, and then 7 after. So if we vote on something, I can then come up, and if I have 7 others in the audience to join me, we can have a revote via secret ballot, correct?
Only if the
That's a
first,
recount request.
only if the
not a
first vote
revote.
was secret ballot.
My understanding is with the 7 after a secret ballot, you can object to the count of the secret ballot.
Yes.
And then my assistant says I'm right. So you can object to the count, and if you get 7 people to object to the count, we'll recount it again. But it doesn't lead you to call a secret ballot for a new count. It's just declaring you don't agree with the count, let's say, of the secret ballot. So if I come back and say, well, we did a secret ballot, we've counted and the count is 100 to 10, you can say, I got 7 people that object to that. We'll recount the secret ballot.
This is RSA 44-A and 44-B.
I'm told yes. I don't have the RSAs in front of me. Jim had quoted the RSA, so.
I'm just struggling to understand why we're
He
still
wants to
having...
know,
I don't understand the question. I think I've answered it like pretty clearly.
Yeah.
Is there confusion among the voters or the moderator about the process?
I don't have a confusion.
Because I
The
can't
gentleman
provide any
had an
additional legal
objection.
guidance on that issue. I think I've provided it.
Let me just read this one last time. There are 2 ways for voters to request a secret written ballot at town meeting. A, any 5 voters can make the request in writing to the moderator before a vote is taken. If the town's population is less than 500, it only takes 3 voters. We're obviously over that. B, after a vote has been taken and declared by the moderator, any 7 voters can orally request the vote to be taken, again, using a secret written ballot, but the request must be made immediately before the meeting moves on to other business, RSA 40, 4-A, and 4-B. That does not indicate that the 7 only applies if it's previously secret voted. It says either or.
No, you're correct. The request for a recount, as I stated earlier, applies to any vote taken, regardless of whether the first vote was a secret ballot vote, a voice vote, a hand vote, a dividing the room vote, or any other way that the moderator wants to conduct the initial count. So you are correct. The description that you provided is accurate.
Okay, so if anybody in this room does not like the outcome of a vote, they can come to the mic before we move on to the next, request a secret vote, and if 7 people in this room agree, then we'll be voting secretly via written ballot. Correct?
Can
I
you-
brought snacks, just so everyone's aware.
Can you cite the RSA again? The one you're reading?
RSA 44-A and 44-B.
Bob, my recommendation is to merely leave it as the moderator in the district meeting will comply with the statutes governing secret ballot votes, because we've already described them. So I think the intent is to comply with that, and the moderator is aware of the rules, and I will guide him in ensuring that the process is followed.
Okay, thank you.
So without taking a vote to comply with what was just said, we'll amend number 10 of the meeting ground rules to, instead of spelling out what it says in number 10, secret ballots, I'll rephrase the language of our council and say secret ballots will be followed according to the revised statutes. So with that in mind, is there any further objections to the meeting ground rules? Yes, sir.
Richard Anthony, Port Village Way. Just to clarify, how do you want to handle the request for a secret ballot hypothetically? If someone wants to do it, are we going to have time to be able to write down names, submit them? You know, if we have 5 people that want to do that.
If I call the vote, you're too late to ask for a secret ballot on that warrant article. I will tell you, normally what people do, they have the 5 people in advance while I'm reading the article, sign the request for a secret ballot. They hand it to me by either the clerk or directly, and then I'll announce after I read the article, I have 5 voters because the clerk has to verify the voters. And I wait for the call while the clerk verifies the voters. But if I read the article and nobody objects, I'm going to move on to the next article. Does that answer your question?
Plastow, last name's Anthony, A-N-T-H-O-N-Y. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I do have about 3 paragraphs to read if we do get a request for a secret ballot as to how we're going to handle it and where you go and all that. So we're all set for that if that comes up. So I think we've answered the one objection, so I'm going to say those rules as I modify them will be in effect for this deliberative session. I'd like to ask those on the dais and those to my right in the Budget Committee and the board, if they could introduce themselves, and we can start here with Kristen.
Good evening, Kristen Lewis-Savage, Plaster, New Hampshire, Vice Chair of the School Board.
Brian Boyle, Atkinson, Chair, School Board.
Hello again, Jim O'Shaughnessy, attorney for the school board and the school district.
Chris Kellen, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you all for being here.
Justin Krieger, Assistant Superintendent of Schools.
Maria Watkins, Business Administrator. Thank you for being here.
Sheila Lowe's, Sandown School Board.
Kim Farah, Danville School Board.
Mark Sherwood, Sandown School Board.
Todd McCormick, Danville, Chair of the Budget Committee.
Michael Boucher, Atkinson School Board.
Sean Manthorn, School Board, Plastow.
Katie Knutson, School Board, Plastow.
Kim McCormick, School Board, Danville.
Can you turn on the mic to my right? And it's a portable mic, so you guys can take it out too.
Sue Sherman, Plastow, Budget Committee, Vice Chair.
Julie Hammond, Atkinson, Budget.
Liz Costa, Plastow, Budget Committee.
Karen White, Sandown, Budget Committee.
Hi, Christy O'Clair, Danville, Budget Committee.
Michael Mascola, Plastow, Budget Committee.
Thank you all. And again, I'm Bob Hart, your moderator. I have a motion that was placed in front of me to allow the following non-residents to speak at the deliberative session if they wish. Attorney Jim O'Shaughnessy, Louis Broad, TTA President, Ryan Richmond, TTA Spokesperson, Justin Krieger, Assistant Superintendent, Carl Inglesby, Director of Plant Operations, Mike Darby, EEI Energy Efficient Investments Representative. I believe this motion is going to be made by Mr. Boyle.
So moved.
And seconded by Kristen Savage. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Abstained? Ayes have it, so those non-residents will be allowed to speak should they wish. Moving on to the warrant article. 2023 Timberlane Regional School District warrant, State of New Hampshire, to the inhabitants of the school district of the towns of Atkinson, Danville, Plastow, and Sandown, New Hampshire, qualified to vote in district affairs. The first session of the annual meeting, the deliberative, you're hereby notified to meet at the Timberlane Performing Arts Center, 40 Greeno Road, Plastow, New Hampshire, on Thursday, the 9th day of February, 2023 at 7 p.m. This session shall consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of warrant articles number 2 through 16. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. A, warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. B, warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote on the main motion as amended. And C, no warrant articles shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. The second session of annual meeting, or the voting on warrant articles 1 through 16 shall be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with town meeting voting to be held on Tuesday, the 14th day of March, 2023 at the town election polls in Atkinson, Danville, Plastow, and Sandown, New Hampshire. Atkinson. Voting will be conducted at the Atkinson Community Center from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Danville. Voting will be conducted at the Danville Community Center from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Plastow. That voting will be conducted at the Plastow Fish and Game Club from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sandown. Voting will be conducted at the Sandown Town Hall from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. For those of you in Plastow, if you have not been watching the cable or the newspaper, the voting location has been changed for this term. Plastow Fish and Game, as I announced. And the times have changed. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We're closing at 7 p.m. We don't go to 8 p.m. on March 14th. So please be aware of the new time and new location. Article 1 was just the election of officers. It's not amendable. We're not discussing it tonight, but you can see in your warrant article all the offices that are open for election. Article 2, operating budget. Shall the voters of the school district raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $83,270,418.18. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $81,401,106.67, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Timberlane Regional School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with the RSA 40:13 Roman X and XVI to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note, warrant Article 2, the operating budget, does not include appropriations proposed under any other warrant article. Majority vote required. Recommended by the school board 700, recommended by the budget committee 810. Do I have a motion to place this article on the ballot as written?
No.
Somebody beat Mr. Boyle. Name and address? Second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Ms. Savage. Mr. McCormick, I believe you want to speak on this?
Yes. So my name is Todd McCormick, Danville, Chair of the Budget Committee again. Been on the Budget Committee for about 5 years. This is my last year in this seat. We started meeting in September. We had about 10 public meetings. We also hosted tours at all 7 buildings in the district, including the Performing Arts Center. Invited everyone from the public to come if they could to inspect and be toured around those buildings to see what the condition was. It's slowly and surely deteriorating over the years. Some of the buildings are 50, 60 years old. We, again, met in public for 10 meetings, had a public hearing a couple of weeks ago. There are quite a few drivers that have increased this budget. In the 5 years that I've been on the Budget Committee, we've level funded the budget year over year. This year, there are some major drivers in healthcare increases, facility increases. We're going to go over that on a couple slides after this, I believe. So yes, it is up. Last year, I think it went up 0.47% year over year. This year, it is up 9% from last year. We did everything we could to try to stave that off over the years, but it's caught up to us. Things are exorbitantly expensive now, and on top of that, the facilities are crumbling around us. And so there is some money in this budget, in this proposed budget, to put some extra dollars into the facilities. But by and large, it's not necessarily the capital expenses, but just kind of the cost of doing business and the fact that health insurance and salaries across the board have raised exponentially from last year to this year. We're going to go to the next slide to show some of the drivers. So the budget process developed in accordance with applicable New Hampshire statutes, RSAs 32, 33, and 195, incorporation of the Budget Committee's mission statement. The Budget Committee will develop a fiscally sound annual budget that will optimally meet the needs of the district by working with district personnel and in consultation with the school board. Throughout the budget process, the Budget Committee will take into consideration district taxpayers as well as support for staff, rigor, evaluation, and accountability initiatives that drive student achievement. Next slide, please. Review of actual expenditures in prior years, consideration for staffing and enrollment projections, deliberation of capital improvements requested within the capital improvement plan, collaboration with administrators, department heads, teachers, and others. So an overview of the budget. The 2022-23 voted budget was $76,317,329. 2023-24 proposed budget, $83,270,418, with a net change of an increase of $6,953,089, which is a 9.1% increase. These are some of the major budget drivers. Benefits up $2.6 million, capital improvement $1 million, special education $985,000, student transportation $760,000. Salaries up $470,000, utilities are up $450,000, facilities are up $220,000, professional services and development $160,000 increase, food service $178,000, and equipment increase $74,000. You can skip past these. I went through these during the public hearing. Yep, let's go past the object codes. All right, so basically what I wanted to say ahead of the discussion was there's quite a few drivers, as you just saw. Three of the main increases: salaries are up 0.9%, benefits 11.9%, and operating is up 12%. And that's essentially what's gone into the 9% increase year over year. Okay.
Todd, you done?
I am done. I
Okay.
guess I can
Thank
read.
you.
Okay.
We have a question at the mic. Yes, sir.
Ryan LeBrecq, 174 Main Street, Plastown, New Hampshire. Fellow voters, the district has proposed a $7.2 million budget increase over last year, as well as over $5 million of yearly increases within the additional warrant articles, resulting in a fiscal year 2024 budget of $88 million if all this excess is voted in. This district's budget is over double the combined town budgets of all participating towns. Do you all feel this is sustainable on the backs of already significant tax increases over the last several years? This is not sustainable. There has been no fiscal responsibility demonstrated by the district. Where will this end? First question I have, we have a $328,000, which your slide said $470,000. There's differing numbers and different presentations throughout the last month. Increase in salaries. The warrant articles include approximately $1.4 million additional salary increases over and above the $470,000 budgeted, for a total yearly salary increase of $1.7 million. This will also increase the budget every year moving forward. How many employees do we currently have in the district, and what is the average percentage increase for each employee?
So would someone like to answer the question about employees and raise?
We have approximately 750 employees in the district. I can tell you off the top of my head an average salary for all of those people.
Average salary increase by percentage, not their average salaries.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
And what's the percentage increase in the average employee's salary? So these $1.8 million in increases represent what percentage of total?
So we have 6 different unions in the district, and we have some employees that are in union. It's very hard for me to give you an average salary for an employee because we have 750 employees. So I mean, all the agreements for the unions are online, so you can have access to them if you want to review them. They have the salary schedules, all of them.
All right, well, I live in the 3% land in the corporate world. And, you know, by numbers, we're averaging, based on total cost, $36 million in salaries and roughly $2 million in increases. It's over a 5% increase per year on average per person. Obviously, per person is going to differ depending on their salary. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't make more over time. We all want to make more over time. But we're adding that to a couple $1 million in insurance increases. So my next question is, what is driving the insurance increase cost, and how has each district employee's share of the cost increased? And what percentage of insurance costs are paid by district employees currently?
So the increase is driven by the guaranteed maximum rate that our insurance company gives us, which is 10.8% for this year. And the percentage that we pay, the district pays 85% of the cost of the insurance for employees, and employees pay 50%.
And when is the last time employee contribution has increased percentage-wise?
Wait a minute. Can I jump in here, please? The majority of the employees who work for Timberlane are members of collective bargaining agreements. So these groups, which we'll be talking about a little later on this evening, are individually, these groups are negotiated with. So there are a lot of your concerns, to the best of our ability at the school board level and administration, we are addressing. So you cannot paint a broad brush. Those questions have come up every other meeting during negotiations, percentage of contribution for health insurance. Depending on the union, some people can get a step raise. There are several people who work for Timberlane who haven't received a raise for 3 years. So we are doing what we can to negotiate with each person. And I think, as Maria mentioned, a small percentage of our people are not, probably well under 200, are not, it's 300 about, are not a member of the union, but majority are a member of the union, and they're negotiated with council, and all these things come up. So we can't sit back here and discuss and debate each individual union negotiation.
Approximately 40 employees are not union. So there are 6 collective bargaining units for the approximately 700 employees.
Thank you, and I want to qualify that my comments are, I go to town deliberative sessions for the last couple of years. I've been absentee a lot of years because I've been away, working away. So the first time I come to a school deliberative, because every time I go to the town deliberative, I'm told, why are you barking up the wrong tree? You should be barking up the school deliberative session. So I'm here, and I have lots of questions, and some of that is learning, and I think a lot of people will learn some things in the process as well. So moving on.
I believe you've almost exceeded your time. If I'll allow you one more question, then I need to have a new person speak.
Okay, that's fine. I can come back up. What is the total transportation budget? If there's a $785,000 increase, what's the total budget before, including that increase? And what is driving the $785,000 increase?
So that information, sir, that information is in the packet that's available to everybody in the audience, including yourself. One of the major drivers, as you know, we do need to, by law, ship our kids to school if they're within a certain distance from the school. We did put out to bid to anybody who was able to provide transportation for the district, as we have year after year after year. Anybody that has kids in the district knows that there have been problems with the buses simply because there are not enough bus drivers. So during this competitive bid process, we did try to get the most financially conservative bid. Unfortunately, there is only one big player in town that can provide services, and the cost for bus drivers has gone up. The salaries they're paying the bus drivers now are not enough. That's why they can't find enough bus drivers. Fuel prices have gone up, et cetera. So that's a prime example. That is a fixed cost. We can't do anything about that. We can't get a stagecoach to bring the kids in. We need the bus company, and there's only one player in town, unfortunately.
Sorry, to answer his question though directly, we enter into typically a 3-year agreement with bus company and also food service, sometimes with an add-on, a +1 and a +1. This year, when we had to renew the bus contract, the increase was 21%. After we went out to bid, we had 2 bidders. We chose the lower of the 2 bids, and it was up 21%. Our transportation budget, I think, is around the order of around 7 or 8 million?
4.5.
4.5 million. 4.5 million for transportation.
Alone.
What other
So we saw
creative ways have
20% increase there.
What other creative ways have been explored to reduce costs?
It allowed you one more question, and you asked that, so I need to move to the other people waiting. I'll recognize this lady, ma'am.
Sarah Wood, 52 Judith Street, Danville, New Hampshire. Mine is, as far as the budget goes and everything, and yes, I do have to agree. My mother-in-law worked in the school district for 17 years driving buses. It's not cheap, and yes, they do go through deliberation every 3 years to figure out what's going to be the best company for our kids, so I can back you guys up. With the $11 million that's set for the special needs department, I do know that there have been many parents that have to go to due processing in order to get their services for their children. One in 44 kids are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, including my son, and it has been very difficult to make sure that he's getting the necessary things he needs. So I guess my question is what does the district have in plan to help improve the special needs department in order to save money in the district and prevent overspending and outsourcing services to allow a more sustainable budget at all special needs students?
Thank you for the question. We are conducting a special education audit. Some of you might be aware that you received a survey, and hopefully those that have received that have completed that survey, but that's just one portion of it. But we are assessing all of our service delivery models that we provide currently, and we are going to be coming forward with a report in the next couple of months with respect to making recommendations for improving services within the district, increasing program options within the district to try and reduce out-of-district placements and provide the opportunities for our students within the district where they have the opportunity to participate with non-disabled peers, providing a greater breadth of services for our students within the district, and doing so at a lower cost. And it can be done, but it's going to take us some time to get there.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Karen Steele, 4 Pebblebrook Road, Atkinson, New Hampshire.
I would like to say that having watched the meetings of both the board and the budget committee, I think that the team has done a great job. They recognize the balance of giving people fair wages and doing the right thing, and I support this operating budget, and I hope that all of my good neighbors vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Sabia, 5 Crystal Hill Road. I don't think this budget is excessive. I think we don't lose track tonight as we deliberate, although the money is an important component of it, is that we're here for the education of kids. That should be the driving factor in everything we do. What can we do, and does this budget reflect getting to be #1 in the state in English and math and science, because I'm sitting next to Sue Sherman. I could very easily see putting $2 million on the capital line. We have walked away from our responsibilities of maintaining safe facilities for over 20 years. I've sat here year after year and asked people to address it. And in the light of trying to keep the budget low, we've avoided taking responsibilities for some of those things. So very easily, this could be $1 million, $2 million higher without batting an eyelash. Fuel, energy, we all go to the supermarket. Those are all driving factors here with the budget. I think you guys have done, I've been very critical of people on this board, on the two boards, very critical. But I've got to tell you, you guys tried to thread a needle this year, and it's not an easy thing to do. So I appreciate your efforts. And you know, let's get to that #1 spot. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Jessica Pelletier, 24 North Ave, Plastow, New Hampshire. I'm just curious, you mentioned in considerations for the operating budget, the projected enrollment, and I'm wondering what the trajectory of enrollment has been over the past several years.
Want me to answer that?
Is anyone able to answer that? Dr. Farr?
Enrollment over the past 10 years has been declining. We are now starting to see that that's leveling off. Every year we get projections from NESDEC, which is New England, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but they project, they look backwards to see where we were, and they were also projecting 10 years forward. The number of students is expected to really level off, I would say, within the next 5 to 10 years. So yes, we have seen a decline over the last 10 years. We've been down almost 1,000 students over the last 10 years, but we're now starting to see it level, and we, based on the building, we may see a slight increase. Sometimes we're seeing increases and some are leveling.
So leveling up, back up to where it was 10 years ago?
No, it's not going to approach that for at least 10 years, and beyond that, we can't project beyond that.
But that is taken into consideration for the operating budget, even though it's declining?
Yes, class enrollments is part of the budgeting process is looking at class enrollment within the scope of the district policies for class sizes. Absolutely.
For instance, the middle school went from 4 teams to 3 teams as the enrollment declined in the middle school, with each team having 4 teachers, so they went from 4 teams down to 3 teams. So yes, there's definitely a decrease, and typically as students decrease, there's always a certain number of staff attrition a year for retirements or leaving. That usually what happens is we just don't rehire for those positions. We haven't had to employ any layoffs because there's usually a certain amount of turnover regardless, and then they redistribute the teachers accordingly.
In addition to the middle school reduction of teachers since 2016, the high school has reduced by 10 teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Karen Steele, 4 Pebblebrook Road, Atkinson. I'd like to call the question on this article, please.
Call the question needs 2/3. I have a motion and a second by Mr. Sapir. All in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, nay? Nay. Can't tell if it's 2/3, so I'm going to ask you, all in favor, please raise your cards. All in favor, and hold them up until we tell you to place them down. Okay, you may place them down. All opposed, please raise your cards. Similar to my deliberative session in Plastow, those opposed made a lot of noise and confused me as to the number. It was 158 to call the question, 20 to not call the question. The question is called, and while we were taking the count of calling the question, a citizen put in an amendment to the clerk, and it's been ruled by our attorney that it's now out of order because the question, we were in the voting mode of calling the question. I see my assistant moderators are agreeing. So I'm ruling this motion out of order since the question was called.
I was standing up ready to ask it. You have the opportunity to ask it.
I had a motion written too. I didn't get a chance to get up and say my motion either. So I would make a motion to suspend the rules and accept his amendment to be heard.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second to amend the rules and to suspend.
To suspend the rules.
Suspend.
I believe that's the correct Robert's Rules term. It's a motion to suspend the rules and have it be heard. Thank you.
So I have a motion
24 North Ave, Nolan Pelletier. I'm sorry.
and a second by
Richard Anthony, 4 Village
For the record, Richard Anthony. Discussion on the motion.
Yeah, so I stand against this motion, and what I would ask is that although they're right, my question is it the right thing to do? On top of that, I would say if this was a close vote or something that would be intimidating or someone felt intimidated, I understand the reasonings behind the secret vote. This was overwhelming, and I anticipate this taking place all night long, and I think we should have more respect for our good neighbors and move this meeting along. Thank you.
For the record, the motion that I have is not for a secret vote. I want you to understand that. It's not for a secret vote.
I would like to speak to my motion. It is not for a secret vote. Every person in here has the opportunity to speak, should have the opportunity to be heard, should have the opportunity to put their amendments forward. It doesn't, just because you want to go home doesn't make it right. If we're going to follow this process, we need to follow it through fully. Thank you.
On the motion.
I disagree, Karen Steele for Pebblebrook Atkinson. I disagree with the request to suspend the rules, and I, again, wish that we should vote as a deliberative body on this article. Thank you.
I had a question on order. Point of order. Yes, sir. We're going to go to the microphone. Name and address.
Dave Knight, 71 Farview Drive, Danville. We're in the middle of a vote. We haven't heard the results of the vote yet. If they
I announced the results of the vote.
So fine, then let them bring the motion back. We haven't said we couldn't reconsider. Bring back a motion for reconsideration, and let's move on.
You could interpret, I believe, his motion to suspend the rules like to reconsider, because then he'll offer the amendment. So, on the amendment, sir. Yes, sir. Name and address.
John Goldman, Settlement Road, Sandown. I don't really have an opinion either way at this point. However, I think less than 30 minutes discussion on a $6.9 million increase is worthy of discussion. I think it's important that everybody gets to have their thoughts and their questions answered. And to be fair, that 30 minutes, no offense, sir, was greatly tied up by one person. We haven't had fair and open discussion on this budget increase. That's the only thing I ask for.
On the motion to suspend.
Any amendments should be voted on. That's our right as citizens. So can be voted down just as easily as well. There should not be any hesitation to vote on an amendment. Just vote it down if you don't like it.
Jim.
Hi, Jim Garrity, 14 East Road, Atkinson. I get that folks are using the rules to call a question, and that's good. But there might be some newbies here who don't know that if you want to speak, you better get yourself in line before someone calls the question. And that's really what you need to do. You got to get in line. If you've got an amendment, just get in line like you're in church, right? Wait, hold on. And those folks might not have known that. And you could say, well, too bad, they should have known that, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just saying, I would support, for fairness purposes, a reconsideration of the call the question, so that those folks who didn't know they should have been in line before someone called the question maybe could get in line. And that's just what I'm saying.
We'll take one more comment on the motion.
Yeah, Richard Anthony, 4 Village Way. Just pointing out the obvious, I think it's important that it is $83 million, all right, and it should be treated like $83 million. If someone has an amendment and wants to be heard, they should not be procedurally shut down because it is $83 million, all right, and should be treated as such, all right, and it's not pocket change. And I fully support the fact that if someone has an amendment, let's hear it. You don't like it, vote it down, and move on. And if it takes a little while, it's $83 million. Take your time.
There's something new, Mr. Sapia?
Yeah, just a point of order, because My understanding is this was about going to a secret ballot.
No, and I said that when you made a mistake, I said you were wrong, and I mentioned that.
I didn't hear you, I should listen better
I
and
guess,
talk less.
Okay. Are you still sitting next to Sue? I don't know. Sue, watch him, will you? It's not for a secret ballot, so I'm going to call the motion, and because of the loud noise last time, I'm not going to ask my counters to count, but I thought it would be appropriate. If you're in favor of suspending the rules so that they can bring the motion up, please raise your cards.
Bob, can you announce what the count needs to be in terms of the majority? My reading of the rules of order is that it requires a 2/3 vote to pass. The motion to suspend the rules typically requires a 2/3 vote. But that's your ruling, not mine.
I didn't have in the rules to suspend the rules how much you needed. We had in the rules how much to...
It does become like a
Call
Russian
the
doll,
question.
but I think they just need to know what the vote is that you're imposing to suspend the rules.
Just for clarification.
A clarification, yes, Ms. Sapp.
Is the motion to suspend the rules on this, it's not for the entire night. It is for this one article.
It's to suspend the rules to not allow the amendment to come forward because the question has been called. So it's limited to the issue of calling of the question, yes.
This one issue.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Barring a rule on the rule to suspend the motion, I would advocate that it's a simple majority.
Mr. Garrity?
It may be simpler if the person who asked to suspend the rules withdraws their motion to suspend the rules, and I will make a motion to reconsider the vote to call the question, and that's a simple majority.
I withdraw my motion, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Okay, does the second withdraw? Second withdraws? Mr. Garrity?
Jim Garrity Atkinson, I would move to reconsider the vote to call the question.
We have a second by Mr. Pelletier.
And I don't think you can't speak to that motion, so.
Yeah, I don't think anyone needs to speak to that. I don't see anybody wanting to. Okay. So raise your cards if you're in favor of reconsidering the call the question and to get to the amendment. Raise your cards if you're in favor. Yeah, quick. Yeah, hold them up. Yeah, we might as well count them. This is a vote in favor of reconsidering. In favor of reconsidering. You can put those down. If you're against reconsideration, raise your cards. If you're against. Hold them up high, please. count on allowing reconsideration. 65 yes, 86 no, so the motion to reconsider fails. And since we called the question and there was no amendments submitted timely and reconsideration failing, Article 2 will appear on the warrant as written. Moving on to Article 3. And I'll repeat while I'm doing this what Mr. Garrity, my assistant moderator, said. If you're standing in line, you will get an opportunity to be heard. If it's your second time to speak, all the people that haven't spoken will get to be heard. And if you're standing in line and someone calls the question, then I'll let you speak. But you need to be in line. There was no, you don't vote on it if there's no amendments. It stays as written. Yes,
Hi, Liz Costa, Glasgow, New Hampshire. I'd like to restrict reconsideration.
Second.
Who seconded it?
Karen Steele.
Do we have a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 2? Though we've already reconsidered it, but all those in favor of...
Point of information, Mr. Moderator. Is this a debatable or is it non-debatable?
I don't believe it's debatable to restrict reconsideration.
Okay, thank you.
If you're in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 2, just raise your cards. I don't think we need to count them. Put them down. All those against restriction.
Democracy is not the rule.
So the ayes have it, and Article 2 is restricted from reconsideration. Moving on, Article 3, lease purchase agreement. Shall the voters of the school district authorize the school board to enter into a 20-year lease purchase agreement for the installation of up to $25,243,000 of energy-saving equipment and associated building and facility improvements at school district buildings in Atkinson, Danville, Plastow, and Sandown, and further to raise and appropriate $2,061,000 for the first year's payment under the lease to be partially offset by energy savings and a resulting reduction in costs. The lease agreement will contain a non-appropriation clause. Majority vote required. Recommended by the school board 700. Recommended by the budget committee 700. Motion to place this on the ballot is written.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on this article.
I'll open up the discussion, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Approximately 20 years ago, Timberlane School District made a very large investment in all our facilities. Now, since then, we've just, quite frankly, been putting on Band-Aids. This year, the school board, with the assistance of EEI, we hired a firm and they went through all the buildings and very quickly came up with well over $100 million of improvements. We recognized that we couldn't ask and get a $100 million article passed. So we, as a board, deliberated and we've come up with $25 million of improvements, which I believe have been put out on the district website, Facebook, all kinds of social media. Obviously, I expect a bunch of people are here to talk about this evening, which is good, as you should be. But I think we're long overdue, and the basic summary of this is, if you put up when I first got on this board almost 6 years ago, it was my goal to see $3 to $5 million a year put into our buildings, which even that number is low. This particular mechanism, if passed, will allow us to do about $25 million improvements and then pay for it over the term of this lease purchase agreement, and then we will be able to offset some of those improvements by savings in energy bills. So that's a quick summary. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this, but I just wanted to open that up for others so they can join in.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, Dave Solomon, Cricket Lane, Sandown. I was going over the project list and I noticed under Sandown North, there's a line item for addition to relocate Sandown Central for the amount of $9,350,000. I was wondering if there's anyone that could speak to a little greater detail to exactly what addition to relocate Sandown Central means.
Someone can answer that? Dr. Farah.
It's not part of that.
That is, there has been discussion over the years about closing Sandown Central and again, and moving it to north. There are major structural renovations that need to be done to Sandown Central. There's no plan set to do that right now. But when you think about the fact that you have two small schools with two sets of administrators, and people are upset about the fact that our taxes continue to go up. I'm from Danville. We have one of the higher tax rates. I think it is a prudent plan to look again to see about consolidating those two schools, perhaps expanding north so that we can maintain one building, have one staff, and move forward that way. So that's what's driving that number. Some of these numbers, I mean, when you're talking $100 million in projects over 9 buildings, these are approximate values. Some of these have not been nailed down yet because until you go out for bid on some of this, you're not going to be able to get an exact amount. So does that answer your question about where that number is kind of sitting? There's
Sure.
also building aid that's starting to become available from the state, which will take us at least 18 months to make the application for, but there was a thought about trying to put that towards that renovation and increase to make one building. But
So as a follow-up, if Sandown Central is moved to Sandown North, what happens to the existing Sandown Central?
that would be up to the,
$64,000 question right there, Mr. Sullivan.
we don't know.
What do you do with the empty building?
I mean, I suppose that the district could sell the land in the building. I don't think there's
To
any
the town?
legally.
That'd be great.
I don't know. I don't
Mr.
think there's
LeBrecq was
anything that
already up,
precludes.
and then I'll recognize this gentleman.
Mr. Moderator, I didn't want to go after him. Yep, Thomas Geary, 5 Linebrook Road, Atkinson. I have a few questions regarding the financing. So the first is, what is the interest rate for the lease?
So at the time that we did this warrant article, which was back in the fall, the lease purchase agreement interest rate was around 5.2, between 5 and 5.3. So we utilized 5.25. Obviously, as you all are aware, the financial market, rates change every day, and it's a market that is extremely volatile now. So, we used the best estimate that we had in the fall when we created the warrant article, but obviously we will go out to bid when it's time if the warrant article passes, we will go out for the best rate that we can find.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow-up. Was New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank contacted to finance this project? Because I just recently looked at their website and they sold bonds in January for 3.44%. And over the course of 20 years, that's a delta of approximately $6.5 million. So I was just wondering if the district did look into bonding these much-needed repairs.
Yeah, we cannot start that process until the warrant article passes, so we have to wait until the warrant article passes. And then there is, we posted something in the website explaining this, but I am happy to speak to it. There is a big difference between a bond and a lease purchase agreement. Some of the advantages of the lease purchase agreement is that it gives you the option to refinance. So with the way the market is right now, it will be my advice to enter into a lease purchase agreement so we have the flexibility to refinance throughout 20 years. Interest rates can do a lot of things, right? So a bond does not give you the option to refinance. a lease purchase agreement, you can have a non-appropriation clause as well. That gives you a lot of flexibility on what you can and you cannot do. You can also prepay a lease purchase agreement. You cannot prepay a bond. So if we have any additional adequacy aid that we get from the state at any given year of those 20 years, we can apply it towards that. With a bond, we don't have those flexibilities.
Okay, and one last question before I turn the mic over. Will this similar question come up for the next 19 years to appropriate the annual payment for this agreement?
No, there's an RSA that says that once the warrant passes, it is for the length of the lease or the bond.
I think the warrant article states for the first year payment, though. I'm just wondering how we would tie up the constituency for 20 years.
That's the wording from the DRA for the warrant article, but like I said, the RSA, which I'm sorry, I don't know it from the top of my head, but maybe Jean can help me with that, but I don't know. But
Mr. Shaughnessy?
Hi. Yeah, the RSA in question is 33:7-E, and essentially the voters are doing two things. They're voting to approve the district to enter into the board to enter into the lease purchase agreement, and they're also authorizing the first year payment. Because it contains a non-appropriation clause, which is also known as an escape clause, the legislative body is theoretically authorized in future years to zero out the line item for payment. And because of the existence of that clause, future legislative bodies don't have to approve the payments, they're just put into the operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Levesque?
Bree Woodworth, Danville, New Hampshire. I was just wondering where it says facility improvements and energy savings, if solar was considered in this calculation with the utility costs almost doubling?
yes, if you take a look of the list of the projects, solar it is considered for the first round of the projects that we include in the 25 million is not, because unfortunately, well, the rebates and the savings that we can exercise out of the projects that we did this in consultation with our with the company that we're using for this. The projects that we pick up are the ones that will realize savings in the shorter time.
And what was the cost savings over a longer time?
No, I think what Maria is trying to say is, when we looked at repairs and maintenance that were absolutely critical, we've got boilers that are 20, 25 years old. We have roofs that are at the end of their lifetime. And then we looked at what are items that are going to give you your quickest payback in terms of energy savings. So if you replace a boiler and you're saving 20% in energy a year, that's a significant savings. Certainly with solar, you have a significant savings, but you can't put solar panels on a roof until you have a roof that is sound. And in the meantime, we are trying to maintain major systems, HVAC systems, that are in disrepair, and they're things that we're even having difficulty getting repair parts for. So I think what our CFO is saying is that we tried, EEI, because this is their business, tried to prioritize what we need to repair and replace as soon as possible, and two, what gives you the biggest bang for your buck in terms of energy savings. Solar is definitely in the works.
Thank you for answering. And then just a quick follow-up. When you talk about safety, I'm a Danville mother, and I was shocked at the lead that was found in some of the sinks in Danville Elementary. So I was just wondering why that wasn't listed on necessary fixes.
Those are already being remediated. And the lead is not in the water, it's from the solder, from the fixtures, so it's being mitigated by replacing those fixtures with a new solder.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
John Goldman, Sandown. I guess my questions, two questions, I guess. 35% of this project is proposed to relocate Sandown Central and build a...
No.
No, it's not.
You said $9 million.
That's not even in the first $25 million.
Oh, right, okay.
That's in the
Not even there.
116 million. That's
Okay.
the total listing of that 116 million.
Okay. So regardless of that, we're talking about boilers, roofs, these types of things, right? HVAC systems. There, A, was a ton of COVID money for HVAC systems. B, there's a capital reserve fund and line every year since the 18, 19 years that I've been around in this area. Where has that money gone? Where is it every year or every few years we get asked at the ballot to raise and appropriate funds from the undesignated fund balance, or from the extra money, if you will, to put into the capital reserve fund? I'm sorry, I think this is, I would agree, we've walked away, and I think Mr. Sapia said it, we've walked away for years on this. This is not feasible at all. $2 million every year for the next 20 years. We're talking about financing light bulbs and solar panels. I think this is completely off the charts. And if there was a motion to reduce it or zero it out, I would support that.
Mr. Sapia?
So, wait, can we answer the question two questions that were posed?
Go ahead.
One was, what did we do with all the COVID money? We replaced HVAC systems, we replaced boilers. It was not a drop in the bucket in comparison to what we still need to replace. We are talking millions. We do have a warrant article that will be coming up to take $900,000 out of the capital reserve fund, which now stands at $1.46 million, to $1 million, approximately $1 million, let's put it that way, okay? To take $900,000 out of that to do the boilers at the high school. And remember, we've got all these other schools that still need it. Danville needs a whole system upgrade. So we are spending all the money that's in the capital reserve. Unlike past boards, because I've been sitting on this board for almost 6 years, that money was sitting there. It wasn't even getting any interest until I found out as a trustee of trust fund and made it do that, put it somewhere else. And then we spent $600,000 out of that for, wasn't it the middle school roofs?
Back.
Yes.
Okay, so we've been spending that capital reserve fund instead of letting it sit there and basically lose money because we're not getting the interest we need. And we have spent all the COVID money. It is, when you look at a list of $100 million, and we got $2 million from COVID funding for HVAC systems, it's just not doing anything. We do not have enough money in our operating budget. We never have to maintain the amount of buildings that we have, especially when we haven't done any major projects in 20 years.
And that's understandable, and obviously I can't blame every single person, right? But this is a problem we've ignored this for 20 years.
Absolutely.
And I think everybody agrees with that. I don't think a $25 million lease purchase is the answer. I'd almost rather...
What would you suggest?
I would rather see the budget lowered a little bit and then raised right back up with $1 million or $2 million a year specifically for this. I get it. You can't do $1 million, you can't do $100 million of projects $1 million at a time. I completely understand that. But at a time where this district has, a portion of this district has been screaming for tax relief for years. I'm the chairman of the Board of Selectmen in Sandown. The numbers that I hear right now is that the existing proposed budget will increase my town's tax payment into the district by $5 million.
But the budget has been level funded for 4.5 years.
I don't agree with that.
It absolutely has.
I don't. My mortgage has gone up, my escrow account's gone up every single year, so.
That could have to do with your reevaluation, but I guarantee you the budget has been level funded for the 4 years that I've been on the budget committee.
I can remember when we crested $70 million, right? And probably before that, and now we're at 83.
What drives the budget in each town is the number of students that are in the district.
Understood.
And so if Sandown is seeing growth in their student population, which they have, that is going to raise the taxes in Sandown. Because for every student that your town is sending into this district, it's costing you about $25,000 in tax money.
100% agree.
And so, let me put my pitch in for conservation. That's why you should be conserving land instead of building houses.
I don't disagree with that at all.
That's my, sorry, I had to say that.
I don't disagree with that at all. But what I will wholeheartedly admit, Sandown sends the most kids. Sandown has also been the most vocal with although we have good representation, we just don't seem to get any traction. And I would echo what some of the others have said, and I would ask my good neighbors to strongly vote this down.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
John, my turn.
Yes, ma'am. I have to wait for you. Go ahead.
You have to do it for me. You'd have to open up the Articles of Agreement.
I have suggested that. I
To
know.
give Sandown any kind of relief and Danville.
Understood.
Getting that done?
We've had those discussions.
God bless you. However, I just want to say this. In order to build new schools, because we have walls that are in trouble in these schools, you're talking $200 million a school now. So, while I had palpitations, they can tell you, I had major palpitations looking at this and seeing what the tax impact was, especially for Sandown, because I don't know what the solution is, but we gotta start doing something.
Thank you for your
We gotta do
responses.
something.
Say,
I want to give the board and the committee kudos, because this is the first time I can remember in a long time that someone's made the effort to address this. So congratulations. Secondly, I'd like to just ask people to consider this. If we had done this 5, 6, 10 years ago, we would have gotten a lot more bang for the buck. If we wait and put this off, we're going to get a lot less for the same amount due to the same reasons why we have an inflated budget this year. The first and most important thing that we all have responsibility for is keeping the children safe here. I have and the staff and the administration. I have serious concerns about some of the structural integrity of some of the parts of the building. I've been walking these campuses for close to 20 years. I have about 25 years in the construction industry. I've built high schools. And I can tell you, things have got to be addressed from a safety standpoint. I think the best way to reduce the operating budget is to invest in your assets. What good is it putting a boiler in the high school if that energy savings just get blown out the windows, which were put in here, I believe, in the 60s when oil was 25 cents a gallon. So you have to, if you're going to put the boiler in, you need to wrap up the building and make it energy efficient. You just can't be one thing at a time. I wish we weren't having this conversation right now. I wish that warrant wasn't up there, but it is. And it just touches the tip of the iceberg of what needs to get done. So I stand in favor of this, Mr. Moderator. That's it.
thank you. He probably has a lot of questions, so he wants you to go first.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. Is it appropriate to submit an amendment at this time?
It is.
All right. Article remains as stated, but requires a 3/5 majority rather than a simple majority.
We're going to take a second.
I'm sorry, if I had I might have had the numbers wrong. What would a bond require if, for a vote, 2/3?
3. So, can I, go ahead.
Which mind signing it?
Yeah.
A bond approval in a SB2 district requires a 3/5 majority vote. And I think that's an illegal amendment because the statute explicitly states that the approval of a lease purchase agreement or a lease agreement with a non-appropriation clause is by a simple majority. I don't think the legislative body can create a higher vote. It's set forth by law.
Okay, fair. Thank you for the clarification.
So
I
you
withdraw.
withdraw
I
your
withdraw.
motion. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Sarah Wood, 52 Judith Street, Danville, New Hampshire. Going back to the whole entire Sandown Central as far as having the kindergartners and the pre-Ks being moved, I do understand that for a little while, obviously the TLC Center was in Plastow and has now been moved to Sandown Central. TLC Center is supposed to be made for the special needs students. Is there something that's going to be in the plans of possibly maybe using that building for our district children as that are on special needs to be able to utilize that building for them, but still kind of keep it in district?
Sarah, thank you. We're not at that stage yet.
Okay.
That's not part of this proposal or for what this warrant article would be for, but that's just something that was put out as a possibility to look at down the road.
Sure.
But we're not at the stage, and I would just ask that when we get to that stage, please come forward with any comments or concerns so they can be considered. I mean, we have a public hearing and we do talk about things, and at all our meetings, all of these things come up. It's great to see so many people here tonight, but it's better if you come to us throughout the year so that we can consider what the thoughts are and have different opinions then, as opposed to, you know, now, because we do the best that we can based on the information we have and the time and the input. And this is why this is before you the way it is now. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hi, Rob Collins from Danville. Excuse me. So I looked at the list, the long list and the short list. And the short list is mostly HVAC and LED lights. And then there's the steeple at Atkinson Academy, I believe, for $200,000. So I know Jack mentioned crumbling walls. People talked about safety for the school. So I would like to hear from board members, if you're willing, how you whittled it down from the $115 million to the $25 million, and why you chose the things that you chose. Why is it critical that we replace all of this HVAC, and why is it critical that we replace all of these LED fixtures? And I'll add on that, if I could, when you break down the interest that's in the warrant article, we're paying $750,000 a year just to have access to the lease agreement.
If I could, I'll take the first stab at it. There's absolutely a lot to unpack there. For the past decade and a half, we have been underfunding what we need, as you know, because you're on the board, underfunding what we need to keep up our second most precious commodity, which is the infrastructure of schools. Largest building, largest entity in all of the towns. First being children, of course, our students. We've been severely underfunding it. And anybody who has taken the facility tours with the BudCom or the school board and has walked through, and I'm just not talking about, you know, paint and cosmetics, but actually seen a lot of our walls, the actual structural walls, are deteriorating. They're leaching from the outside in. We have had our engineers look at that, and part of this cost analysis and, you know, what's the most important for the, you know, what's the biggest bang for the buck. There are a lot of things that went into that. One, taking a look at the infrastructure. We'll just talk about HVAC. We have, you know, systems that are 25 years old. We can't get replacement parts for them now. We have boilers that are breaking down that they can't get replacement parts. And if you're in Atkinson, you know, your kids had to go home for a couple days because there wasn't heat. We're seeing this happening more and more and more. So it's not as if we're looking at our home and the paint's peeling and we're saying, okay, we should, you know, probably fix that up and put on some primer and some paint. It's beyond that because we've neglected it year after year, and now we're looking at this great paint and seeing that there's actually dry rot. Okay, and it's not just in the trim anymore. We're afraid that it could be, you know, affecting the structural integrity of the school. That's part of what EEI helped us with. And so some of these costs and projections are just that, projections, because quite honestly, we don't know the amount of physical infrastructure that will need to be replaced. And as far as the interest rates go, I absolutely get it. I understand what you're saying. There was a lot of discussion, I'm on BudCom as well, about what's the best, most responsible way to finance it, and what's the best, most responsible way to keep our assets valuable and attracting value. Most of us, when we buy a car, we don't pay cash for it. And this is a $25 million ask. We have had people come up here saying, well, you know, we should lower this from $2 million to $1 million. We're concerned about that $1 million lift. Can you imagine going to the towns and saying $25 million up front? The advantage of this lease over a bond is we're not locked in. And interest rates have been going up and down. We've come from historic lows. Now we're settling the mean point. We don't know where they're going to go. The advantage of the lease is we have the ability to renegotiate should rates go down. You don't get that with a bond. And we get all the money up front. And the boilers that we were pricing out at the beginning of this process, some of them are no longer available and have increased by double digits from when we first put the bid in. So $1 today is not going to buy the same thing $1, 5 years from now, will purchase. Does that address any of them, or am I just coding the surface here?
No, I get what you're saying, but I guess to be specific, the items that are on there.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Why are they on there?
So first off, we were looking at safety and structural integrity, and then looking at what can we do to help mitigate the upfront cost. And some of those projects fortunately aligned with some of our needs, such as the boilers, the HVAC, et cetera. We have an extremely inefficient system for heating our schools right now, and the windows were brought up. That is part of the plan and part of what we looked at as well. So if we know that these boilers, statistically, they're going to need to be replaced within the next 3 years, well, if we don't do that now, we're going to have that spend in 3 years. So let's do it now, get them while the prices are cheaper, and enjoy the savings that we get from increased fuel efficiency.
Also, Rob, that I think what we're attempting to do here is get the most bang for the buck. So these are the type of improvements that should yield the quickest energy returns, which will help offset the cost of this product. Nothing on here is really a wish list. I mean, I'm sure that people out in the audience and people who couldn't make it here tonight would love to see an addition, like a new locker room, all kinds of things that we know we need. But we're looking for things that we need. We'll also have an offset, and these clearly will give us, or give the district, some kind of offset.
And just to add to that, it wasn't the 9 of us that decided what these projects should be. I mean, we consulted, we had EEI that came in and looked at our schools extensively and came up with these lists and worked on them over and over and over again and gave us priority lists of, if you have this much money, this is what needs to be done, and this is why. So we went on the advice of professionals that look at this to figure out what we need to bring our schools to a standard where we can continue, because we could get to a point too where if something happens, as we've heard, holes in walls, things of that nature, then what do we do? If we have to shut down a school, what do we do? I mean, the costs of that are going to be astronomical, and then where do we go? And then that's an emergency cost. So we're trying to do what we need to do to keep the schools up and running and figure out where we go from there.
And also, last one too, that because looking out the audience, construction costs before, this is a whole new world in 2023. A lot of us are probably aware that there's been, like Salem, I talked to some people at Salem High School about 3 weeks ago. They did an incredible improvement. It is now twice that price in what's happened in the last 3 years. It's illogical, but it's reality. So 4 or 5 years ago, you could say, I can build a new high school for $100 million, roughly. You can't do that. No. It makes no sense, and I don't see anything in the immediate future changing that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Karen Steele for Pebblebrook and Atkinson. Quick question on solar. I know when I was investigating putting solar panels on, I was told that if I had to replace my roof, I could get the 30% federal tax credit on that as well. And I was just curious if that entered into your guys' decision making as I look at some of the price of roof replacement.
We don't need to. We can't take advantage of tax credits.
So the school district can't? That's only for the private homeowner? I guess that was really my question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We don't pay tax.
Ms. Sherman?
I wanted to add in that these projects not only had been looked at by EEI, discussed at the school board level, discussed at the budget committee level, but these have been on the CIP list for numbers of years. Not with these figures, because the figures change, it's flexible, but these are projects we've had in our focus for years. This isn't all brand-new thoughts.
Mr. Safety's already spoken. Do you want to let him speak before you?
I'll be quick. And thanks to John and Sue Sherman, who worked diligently over summer to put together that CIP outline. Two quick questions. One, there's $1 million in the capital line in the budget, and I know you can't speak for the next board, but say this passes, could we use that $1 million in that capital line to pay that? In other words, don't expend that $1 million. I think that $1 million is there as a contingency in case this fails. I could be wrong.
Jack, we have so many things that we need to do in the school.
I
If we don't spend that money, we're gonna come back here with something else and it's gonna be worse.
Trust me,
It's
you-
pig on a lipstick right now. We have to keep spending, I
Has
hate
there
to
been a
say it, we
strong-
have to spend what we have access
Has
to.
there been a stronger advocate for the facilities than me? I mean,
No, there
seriously.
isn't. No, that's
So,
why I'm just saying.
Second
I'm watching
question.
Carl, I'm
yeah.
watching Carl up there shaking his head going, no, like,
Hey,
it
Carl.
needs to be done, so.
And Jack,
So-
your point on the walls, that's what we're looking at right now. We have no idea
No,
what those walls are gonna cost us.
No,
That could
I-
eat up $1 million right there.
Trust me, I did it for years, I get it, I understand it. The second point I want to make is I hope we take this as a learning lesson, and I hope next year I see a warrant up there. I don't even know if you do it in the form of a warrant, but it would be nice. Across the country, there have been formulas established where you spend, it equates to the total replacement value of a building, so we don't find ourselves here ever again, where you spend 3%, it could be any percentage you want, determined by the board and the budget committee. Say, but for instance, a standard is 3% to manage and maintain the buildings, janitorial, et cetera. 2% of that total replacement value goes into repainting the doors, the walls, broken windows. But then you tuck away 1% of that total replacement value every year. So you chip away at it over the course of 25 to 50 years. Not only should we develop a formula like that, but then we have to be disciplined to execute that formula year over year. And this way here, we don't have all this, what we're struggling with this afternoon or this evening. Thank you.
Jack, you can't do that in New Hampshire. You've got a default budget that holds you to what you spent the previous year. So if you want to put it in 3%, which is now in Massachusetts, they're making you put that, to try to do this, you're going to have to get an operating budget to pass. And I can tell you right now, looking at the last 15 years, if the default budget is less than $500 or more, if the proposed budget is more than $300,000 to $500,000 over the default's going to pass. So that's the issue. If you could put that money into the operating budget, if we could know that we got this money every year, which is what we're looking to do, we could do this.
You misunderstand what I was trying to say. You will probably already have the 3% in your janitorial, your maintenance, your garbage. That's already kind of baked into the sauce. And
No,
then
it's not in this budget. Not in this budget.
You don't have your janitors, you don't have your wax and your soaps and your buckets to manage and maintain the buildings. Of course you do.
That's maintenance. That is not
Right, but
capital
what I'm
repairs
saying,
yet.
is, there is a formula. I'll send you the thing.
Okay.
It's
That'd be great.
It's 3-2-1. It's pretty simple. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm Ann Gerns, 3 Rolling Hill Avenue, Plastow. And I really wish someone would speak to the choice of this Lend-Lease program and what it is, and B, why you chose it over any other kind of financial instrument in order to do this. And I think I'm not clear. We're going to pay $2 million every year for 20 years, that's $40 million, for the use of $25 million now? I'm confused. I really wish somebody would outline what the program is. I probably should have heard it at another meeting. I'm sorry I didn't.
Does anyone wish to answer?
Yes, so We do not have the funds available in the budget, in the operating budget.
Oh, I know that.
To take care of this, so we have to somehow finance these projects. So as I mentioned before, we cannot start researching which is the best entity to provide, to go for, to get this loan or this lease until this warrant article passes. So we are going to go out to bid. If the article passes, we are going to go out to bid to get the best rate that we can with the institution that better fits our needs.
But that's not answering my question.
Okay.
I know you're trying to get the best rates you can and
Okay.
do things the most responsibly.
We're gonna-
But
excuse me,
that's
we're
not
gonna-
the answer to my question.
Go ahead, Jim. I think this might help, I don't know. But one thing we often say is that a lease agreement like this is basically just a loan. You're borrowing the money and you're paying it off over the course of the loan. What makes it different from a bond is that there's what they call, I said this before, but it's a crazy word, it's called a non-appropriation clause, which means future legislative bodies can zero out the payment, and that's why it's different than a bond. It's not considered debt because theoretically the voters can zero out the payment in future years. But it's, in all other ways, it's the same as a bond or any other loan.
I see. So you put the 25 million in savings and then dole 2 million a year back to the company?
Yeah, you get the money, you do the project, and over the course of 25 years, you pay off the loan. That's basically it.
Okay, so the money's dispersed as you do the work? Ah, okay. That makes sense. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to let this gentleman speak. Then, Ms. LeBrecq, I'm going to ask you to take the mic and do your presentation.
Just for further clarification, this does not go into the default budget year after year?
It will.
I hear a non-appropriation cause, so if the proposed operating budget gets voted down, does that mean you don't pay the annual payment? I'm not following it, so. Does it enter into the default budget?
You'd have to pay any contractual liability, absolutely.
Yes, it will.
So that conflicts, at least what I'm understanding, from the non-appropriation clause that Attorney O'Shaughnessy stated.
There's lots of different ways the legislative body could non-appropriate the specific payment, but voting down the operating budget wouldn't be one of those ways because the payment is approved today and it would be in the default budget as a contractual obligation under the definition of default budget in the law.
What would be a mechanism to do that then, to non-appropriate it?
The legislative body during deliberative session would, by amendment, vote to zero out or non-appropriate the payment for the lease agreement, basically. So you would do it during deliberative session. It would pass. The voters would then pass the operating budget, and that would have a zero in that line item, or that purpose will have been zeroed out, and that is considered a non-appropriation.
Okay. One last comment. I do think this mechanism is intended to skirt the supermajority required for a bond, and I hope the voters see that. Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Mr. LeBrecq because there'll be tons of people still coming to this mic, and that gentleman's been standing. And I'm going to remind you, Mr. LeBrecq, you have 5 minutes, so I hope you can get your questions all out. Mr. LeBrecq.
Other people have taken over 5 minutes at this point, even single individuals. But regardless of that, first of all, I'm a 30-year construction professional, construction management degree. I've managed billions of construction across the country, from Hawaii to Maine and everywhere in between. And have been involved in these proposals. I was involved in a proposal with a company for Manchester School Systems that did something similar to this. While I don't disagree that Everyone in front of us has expended effort and good faith to get to this point. This is not how you handle these things. This is not a good example of capital improvement plan and moving forward with the capital improvement plan. First of all, to address some comments, comment about our schools are 60 years old. I live in a house that's 190 years old. I can go in every house in this district and probably find $100,000 to $250,000 worth of issues that I want to do. Any construction company can go in any school system and find many millions of dollars, up to billions of dollars of unmet need. Another point, it's been mentioned that the walls are falling, the walls are crumbling, the schools are falling down. I don't know this, I haven't been through the schools, I haven't done the assessment, but I will say there's not one project in the 25 million that addresses any structural repairs to any schools. If you look through every one of those, there are controls upgrades, HVAC upgrades, roof upgrades. With the exception of a steeple repair, there's nothing structural to address what is supposedly the schools falling down and these massive safety issues. As a matter of fact, none of those projects are safety issues. Yes, a leaking roof, you can patch it, and I also direct everybody to a 12/1/2022 town meeting or school board meeting. It was brought to my attention on Vimeo. I watched it at 4 o'clock this afternoon today. It's very fresh in my mind, and it's very clear to me that the reason the lease option was taken was because those in front of you didn't want to put it in front of a 3/5 majority. It was specifically said that way. Someone made a comment, if this is a 3/5, we'll never get it passed. EEI submitted a proposal. It had 4 options. This was the most expensive option. Of course, the most expensive option is what's been put in front of us. It was also said, well, if we don't go big or go home, then we'll never have another opportunity to do this because it'll probably, it won't get passed in future years. So we're putting forth this $25 million. We're obligating $40+ million over 20 years. The RFP that was put out to the bidders, I haven't been able to find. I've requested it. No one's been able to provide it to me. From what I understand, there's been 2 bidders. I doubt the RFP was a very high quality in the sense that generally these RFPs go out with a facility assessment already done. So a town or school system would hire a design engineer or a construction manager like myself and bring in a team of people and go do a facilities assessment, assess the need, which apparently here is $116 million, and then categorize that need by this is an immediate need, this is a public safety issue, we got roofs leaking, that's an immediate need. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, whatever you want to say, and really put some thought into the prioritization of projects based on life safety, based on facilities repairs like structural issues, et cetera, et cetera. From what I understand, that didn't happen. What happened, I believe, is an RFP went out. I don't know what it said in it. It had very little bid participation because when contractors like myself see these RFPs, we're not going to get excited about something that requires us to go walk through all the schools and develop our own list. We have to spend money to do that. It costs money to bid projects. If we have other projects to bid that are more fully developed with quality RFPs, we're going to go after those projects first. We're not going to go after the projects that require us to expend our resources in support of the town without any money coming in. And I assume EEI was not paid anything for this effort to date. Is that correct?
No, not yet. Well, they have done projects and they have been paid for the projects, not for the evaluations.
Right, so they did the evaluation at their own cost.
Sorry, your point on the evaluation, they did prioritize 1, 2, 3, 4, just as you stated.
Okay, but it wasn't a free evaluation. They didn't get paid to do it. Their marketing, business development, they want to sell you a bill of goods. I know nothing about EEI. They're probably a good outfit. Maybe I'll work for them one day. I don't know. But their response is only as good as the RFP that's put forth. And the RFP that's put forth from what I understand in conversations with others, it doesn't sound like it was very comprehensive.
I would disagree, and the idea that EEI is selling us a bill of goods, even if they're trying to sell us a bill of goods, and I'm not saying that they are, there's $116 million in projects here that they're recommending. We're dropping in the bucket with $25 million of major repairs here. We have not included the structural issues with the walls because right now they're still in engineering and we have no idea what that cost is going to be. If this gets passed or if the money is going to have to come from somewhere to get that done, but we had no way to input that into this $25 million because you might be right. Maybe they're not falling down the way people keep saying. Maybe they are. It could be anywhere from $200,000 to $10 million. I don't know. So we couldn't put it in here.
So next year we'll come back with another 10, 20 million. Regardless.
Excuse me.
That's what we're
It
talking
very
about.
well could be. Okay, it could be, or it could be back to 200,000. I don't have a crystal ball. We're just trying to make sure that we do right here by the students and the staff in these buildings. We just went through COVID. We put as much money as we could into our HVAC systems, but they are not up to where they need to be, and our systems are going to fail. We have a list of all the HVAC systems in this district, and I can tell you the majority are approaching 20 to 25 years old, and I live in a 250-year-old house, so I understand that these buildings are not very old, but they still need maintenance.
I don't disagree that buildings need maintenance. I maintain mine constantly. A 20-year-old boiler is not that old, and mine's probably 30. But regardless of that,
Can I interrupt you for a moment, Mr. Levesque? Mr. Levesque's making a presentation. I would rather not have a debate going back and forth. Can we let him finish his presentation? If some of you have a comment in response to it, we'll give you time to speak. But constantly, going back and forth doesn't get him to finish his presentation. Mr. Levesque, can you continue and finish?
yes, it's Lebrec.
Levesque.
So the second bidder, what was their proposal in brief?
That's not a presentation.
It was not as inclusive. They didn't have the bandwidth, and after doing research and looking at these the two companies that did agree to do an analysis of the school, we went and we spoke with some other districts that had utilized them, and one was received strong recommendations, whereas the other was lacking. So there are a couple different things that went into deciding to choose EEI over the other company.
Okay, and in regards to the comment that we have to vote on this lease before we can determine if it's a bond, that statement contradicts itself. The warrant article is asking to appropriate money for a lease.
No, the CFO said that we have to vote on a lease, and then we can go out to see what we can get for an interest rate on the lease.
On the lease, but it's not a
Yes.
bond.
No, it's not a bond.
And it's not a bond because it has to be a 3/5 majority, which is very clear in the 12-1 video. Another member of the board, or whoever it was, and I don't know any of you, and I'm not going to name names because I don't know anybody's names, but indicated that if you go out on the street and ask 100 people what the budget was for the town, they're not going to know, so don't worry about the budget increases and the monies. It was very appalling in that video when you look at it as a taxpayer for the things that were said. Anyway, that's an aside. What performance guarantees does the town have in this agreement or framework of agreement with EEI for energy efficiency performance guarantees?
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator, I think what you just told us, we're getting a presentation. I'm not hearing a presentation. I'm hearing
Well,
this.
he has the right to
I'm
ask
hearing
some
a question and
questions.
answer.
He has the right to ask questions of the board if you wish to answer them. You can refuse to answer them or say you don't know. But I would caution Mr. Lebrec, he asked for more time. Mr. Lebrec, you're getting near like 8 minutes, so if you could ask your questions and then finish your presentation so other people at the mic, including Mr. Peltier, can speak, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, so that's one question. Next question, is EEI required to competitively bid all the work to subcontractors in this agreement? How much is EEI self-performing of the work? There's also a discrepancy. The school budget slide deck from 112 indicates a first-year cost of $1.8 million. Yet the warrant article released on 127 indicates a first-year cost of over $2 million. Why is there a discrepancy? There is no design for this project, so I assume this is a design-build contract with EEI potentially. Would EEI be bonded to complete the work? Have they provided comprehensive estimates for each one of the projects, or are they simply conceptual estimates that'll likely change and go up? So in other words, the $25 million voted on, if passed, may only cover half the projects by the time EEI gives you the real numbers. Once they go out to bid, get the actual cost and spend more resources. Not saying that they're purposely doing that, but it's probably a conceptual estimate that's not based on, it's based on an estimator's best guess at that point in time. They didn't go out to the market to get those dollars, and maybe that's not true, but that's my belief. Has the district considered hiring a construction manager to prepare a quality RFP, provide professional guidance to said RFP, and provide a detailed review of construction estimates? Unless anyone up there is well versed in construction, it's a different animal. If you don't do it full time, you can look at a bunch of numbers and you're probably not going to know what you're looking at. So a third party reviewing these proposals is essential to making sure the town is getting best value. So with that, and I'm not going to sit down because I'll get circumvented or someone will come through with rules that'll try to stop me from doing things that I'm in my rights to do as a voter and taxpayer of this town. Ultimately, this is a $1,000 a year tax increase, what we're all talking about tonight, for every household in here. In addition to the several thousand a year that we've already been increased in the last 5 years, whether it's Plastow, I'm a Plastow resident, so that's all I know, but this isn't insignificant. And the mantra that, well, we've underfunded maintenance, well, maybe we weren't fiscally responsible with our overall budget, and because of that, we overspent in other areas and we underspent in the areas that should have been spent on. So now we're in this predicament. And I agree the schools need to be worked on, but this is not the way to do a professional construction RFP response, contract negotiation, etc. Thank you.
Mr. Sapia.
Thank you very much. A little bit about my background. I'm a fourth-generation bricklayer. I was a mason contractor. I had 100 bricklayers on my payroll, and I worked for companies like Suffolk, Gilbane, Perini, Floor. I can go right down the list. I also sat on the board when we worked on the gym on the pointing job, and I can tell you, the mason contractor told me that the wall over the roof, we were very close to losing it. I can also tell you, I, unlike my good neighbor, have spent 20 years and I know where the structural defects are, and I don't know the ones I don't know about. So to say that the walls are in pretty good shape, well, these buildings, when they were built cheap, with the exception of this one. Okay, you have the drive-in instead of masonry, you have subpar designs. We had probably 20 feet of water that sat between the brick and the blockwork all around the gym for probably 20 years. Not too many people are familiar with that until the water came pouring out on the gym floor, okay, because of improper design. These are the things that my good neighbor do not know about, but those that have been involved on the campus and with the district for the last 20 years do. I agree. The buildings that are 150 and 200 years old were built much differently than the buildings of today. The high school and the middle school was built on a wing and a prayer. I wonder if, and I don't know if you have a student here at the school, and I don't know if they're an athlete, but try and go back in the athletic wing in the fall, and it's 110 degrees back there, and the coaches work out of a closet, and there's no training facility for the trainers. It's horrendous. And we have this discussion, this debate every year, and by not moving forward, if you think it's costing us a lot now, put it off for another 5 or 10 years and see, we'll be having that same argument, but only for half the amount of work. And I'll put my qualifications up against anyone in this room. The other thing I would highly recommend is if this does move forward, we have a tremendous amount of good people in our community in the 4 towns. We have architects, we have engineers, we have contractors that would gladly step up, form a committee to have a little bit of oversight to assist the budget committee and the board in making some of these decisions. You have incredible people in this community that have always extended themselves to our children. Thank you.
So before we let this next speaker on my right speak, I have 2 motions to amend here. One came in first, so I'm going to recognize that speaker for his motion. In the future, perhaps if you're new, and one of you did say you're new here, when you have a motion, we said you write it down and sign your name. You make the motion at the mic, hand the paper in, and we get your motion seconded. Then we have the motion in writing. You really shouldn't pass them in and don't make it at the mic, because I'm not supposed to be the one to read them. So, but I'm going to let you know that, so I'm going to let this gentleman speak first, because I have a motion from him, and I have a motion from Mr. LeBrecq. So I'm going to have him go second on his motion, because it came in second, and then we'll listen to Mr. Pelletier after we take these 2 motions.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question in regards to this article?
No,
No.
not at this time, but you can speak after.
But I was standing here to ask a question.
Well, this gentleman's been standing here and he gave me his motion like 5 minutes ago.
Mr. Moderator, I would yield my time to Mr. Heffernan.
So, Mr. Heffernan, go ahead.
Just a real quick and easy question that was brought up in regards to the school board policy and going out to bid. With these projects, would each project have to go out to bid per school board policy? Dennis Heffernan, 4 Secluded Circle in Plastow.
Yes. Everything goes out, yes, everything goes out to bid, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to make your motion?
Sure, I'm really wishing I didn't hand it in.
You want to take it back?
No, I was looking to keep the article as stated, but with the added language that the interest rate shall not exceed 3.5%, and that is to align with the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank rates that were released in January. My only hang-up was the financing and the mechanism. It was never for the building improvements. So if it doesn't exceed 3.5%, I'd support it.
So for the record, could you give your name again?
Thomas Geary Atkinson.
So we have a motion to amend Article 3 by adding the sentence, "The interest rate shall not exceed 3.5%. Do we have a second? Second. We have 2 seconds. Discussion on his motion.
I'd like to discuss something on the motion. I want Brian Boyle, Atkinson, I want to speak against the motion. For the simple reason, I'm not sure we can get the 3.5%. So if you can get 3.5%, if Tim can get 3.5%, we'll go get 3.5%. But if we can't get 3.5%, it's not going to do us any good.
Discussion on his motion. Yes, sir.
The 5.25% and the lease itself, if this passes, is that passed through to EEI, or does this, I guess I'm completely confused on EEI's involvement, because it's been said that this will go back out to bid, every project's going to go back out to bid, yet we have this lease at 5.25% with a scope of work that's been provided by a company and a proposal through a bid process. What obligations does the town have to EEI? Is EEI the one that's soliciting the financing for the town and therefore the rate via the lease payment? I think that's the way it probably would work. Explain in detail the financing part of this, because it just doesn't make sense.
Did someone talk to the interest rate? I thought I heard it discussed before, just as a point of clarification. that you really don't know the interest rate. You're going to put it out to bid after the article might pass, but you're not going to put it out to bid. So probably to answer the question that I heard asked, you're not locked into that 5-point-something%. Am I correct?
That's
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay, so I think that answers your question.
Who's putting it out to bid? EEI, the town?
No, the school district will. So if the warrant article passes, we will go out to bid for the rate for the lease.
So the lease cost is completely independent of EEI?
Yes.
You're gonna get a
Our
lease for $25 million, and then you're gonna go hire EEI to do the work?
Yes.
Or
This is-
bid out the work, and EEI may get it or may not get it based on competitive bid process for every project on that list?
We already went out to bid, we already did the RFP. There were only 2 companies that responded to our RFP. EI was one of them. The lease that we're gonna get is for the Timberlane Regional School District. We are going to go out to bid for the rate. Regardless, I can guarantee you that we are going to try to get the best rate that we can. I am a taxpayer in this district as well. I can guarantee you that I will do my best to get the best rate that we can. The municipal bonds that the other gentleman is referring about, it even says in their website that that day that the bonds were issued, they were very lucky, with those words say in the website, that the rates hit down, that the rates were down that day. It changes every single day. Rates change every day. So yes, I can guarantee you that if the article passes, I will do my best to get the best rate that we can.
I understand that. So what
The amendment
is EEI, is the town, if this passes, is the town
Mr.
hiring
LeBrecq,
EEI?
we're discussing only the motion to amend, which only relates to setting a cap on the interest.
The
It
interest
says
rate
nothing
is
about
part of the
EEI.
article,
So
and the proposals by EEI, so they're tied together.
I don't believe they are. You can speak to the 3.5 if you're in favor of it, against it, and why you are.
I think this should be a bond, and it should require a 3/5 majority, not a lease. So I am not in favor of it, and I'm not in favor of the 25 million, and there'll be further amendments after this one, if this one's voted in or not. Thank you.
On the motion to cap the interest at 3.5, do you guys want to speak to that, Mr. Pelletier?
Why not? I'm not in favor of it. I actually agree. I think it should be at 3/5, and I think this is pretty crazy. So that's it.
Any more discussion on the motion? The motion is to add the interest rate shall not exceed 3.5%. Seeing nobody, yes, sir.
Actually, just a point of clarification from the gentleman who submitted it was for clarification, was your intention to make certain we got the best rate, or we got the New Hampshire rate that you saw, that you just looked up online? And if that second part was your intention, would you consider revising your amendment to say seeking a bid equal to whatever the best rate is, which with whatever municipal entity you were referring to? So in other words, if their best rate is 3.6.
I understand what you mean. However, I maintain by the principle that if you're taking out a 20-year loan, lease, bond, whatever it is, it should be under a supermajority vote. We're really indebting people that haven't even been born yet, if it's 20 years. However, I can concede that if we can match the municipal bond rate currently at 3.5, that was my reasoning.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
On the motion.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes,
In fact,
ma'am.
that was going to be my point, is I would like to restrict the discussion to be specifically on this motion of adding the restriction of the 3.5%. I'm against this motion because I think it kneecaps and prevents good people from doing the good work for the school district. And thank you very much.
Anyone else to speak on the motion before Mr. Pelletier speaks twice? You're all set? Okay. We're going to call the question. If you're in favor of the amendment, to add interest rate shall not exceed 3.5%, I assume that's per annum, please raise your cards. You can put them down. I don't think we need to count, Jim. If you're against the motion, please raise your cards. Okay, motion fails. I have another motion here. This is a motion by Mr. Lebrecht. Article 3 amendment. He wishes to reduce the value of the article to 0. So I assume that's the appropriation. Shall appropriate $0, Mr. Lebrecht? Correct. He says correct. Do we have a second on that? We have a second by Mr. Pelletier. Discussion on the motion to reduce the value item in Article 3 of raise and appropriate instead of $2,061,000 down to 0. On the motion. Mr. Lebrecht or Mr. Pelletier on the motion.
You put it forward, right? So he has the right to speak.
Mr. Lebrecht.
I'd like to request a secret vote on that as well.
You have a question, Mr. Garrity?
Yep.
This isn't on, that's okay.
Here we go.
I respect his motion and just want to remind everyone, a secret ballot usually takes 30 to 45 minutes. Thank you.
So I'm going to try to interpret the signers of this because then the clerk has to check to make sure, number one, you're here. So when I call your name, if I can interpret it, stand up and say here, and then we'll check to make sure you're registered voters. Nolene Pelletier?
Nolan.
Noel Pelletier?
It's Nolan and Jess. There's a
No one.
Nolan.
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 Okay. Nolan.
Like Boland with an N.
Okay, I can't read your writing, but that's okay. So
No, you
you're
can't.
here.
I'm here.
He's here. Jessica Pelletier. She's here. David Solomon. He's here. Amanda Knight. She's here. And Jonathan, you'll have to help me. Jonathan Golden here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll just have the clerk check with. Jim, can you get this? Just a check to make sure. I'm sure you're registered, but.
I mean, if we have these, we're registered, right? Should we just hold these up to save some time? Right?
Can the 5 that did it raise your card? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to read my article about secret ballots. Question of clarification has been asked, Mr. Lebrecht. If you look at the article, a dollar figure appears in 2 places. Is your motion to replace both places with 0?
Mr. Moderator, if he would be willing to withdraw, he actually might have saved some time because I had a very similar motion. My motion was I move to replace both figures of $25,243,000 and $2,061,000 to the dollar value of 0.
I like your motion better if you'll withdraw it.
I withdraw mine. We'll use his.
And do you second his?
And the secret vote continues.
So now we're replacing Mr. Lebrecht's motion with a clarification motion made by Mr. Pelletier. Essentially, he's reducing both dollar figures in Article 3 to 0. So as he mentioned at the mic, the $25,243,000 reduced to 0. The $2,061,000 reduced to 0. I assume the 5 wish to still have a secret ballot. Would you raise your cards again if you do? 1, 2, 3, 4. Who was the 5th? 5, okay. So now let me read about the secret ballot. We will now hold a ballot vote. Those who wish to vote are asked to exit the auditorium, not immediately, wait, through the main doors. Voting will take place across the lobby in room 707. Please enter through the door to the left of the televisions. Once you have voted, you will exit room 707 through the far door, cut through room 716 across the lobby, and re-enter the auditorium through the side door.
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, sir.
I would like to offer a suggestion for my good neighbors who would like the secret ballot vote. And I want to honor and respect their wishes, but maybe this can help out. Would it be possible for you as the moderator just to say, for all those that think they might support it, just a show of hands, not a vote?
No.
He's asked for a secret vote, and he has the right to do that, and he's got his 5 signatures.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
If you'll all please just remain seated for one moment. I need to see the ballot clerks, and then I'll come back and we'll dismiss you to go vote. Hang on. Secret ballot was made. All voters that wanted to vote voted. The tally is: those in favor of the motion, 26. Those opposed, 133. Motion fails. I recognize Mr. Mascola.
Hello, this is Michael Mascola of Plastow. I'd like to call the question.
The motion to call a question? I have a second. Who said the second? Did you get the second? Okay, all in favor to call the question signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Questions called. Article 3.
Mr. Moderator, can I also make a motion to limit reconsideration?
Let me announce the results of
Oh,
that
okay.
motion. Okay, so Article 3 will appear on the ballot as written. Another motion, Mr. Maskell.
I'd like to make a motion to limit reconsideration.
I'd like to
Motion
second
limit
that.
reconsideration. Do I have a second?
Karen Steele seconds that.
Thank you, Carrie Steele. Restrict reconsideration of Article 3. We already did it on Article 2. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to Article 4. Before I read Article 4, let me remind you that this is a collective bargaining, or CBA article. It is non-amendable. They're cost items. I'm going to read the article, and maybe somebody will speak to the number, but it's non-amendable by law. And that's one of those articles we can't change. If you're not in favor of this CBA, and we have a whole bunch of them, it's up to you to vote no at the polls, because we can't amend the dollar items. They're technically called cost items. So I mentioned that in advance for all the CBA articles. I'll also mention in advance, so I only have to do it once, the secondary article after the CBA articles that says authorization to call a special meeting on cost items, that also is unamendable. So, and I don't believe anybody's going to speak on that except me reading it, because it can't be changed and amended. Language is prescribed by law. In the event the CBA article fails, you need the second article to call a special meeting to have another meeting to go over the cost items. But we cannot change the cost items here tonight on the CBA collective bargaining agreement articles, and there are a number of them. I confirm that with our counsel. Article 4, 3-year collective bargaining agreement, Timberland Administrators Union. Shall the voters of the school district approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Timberland Administrators Union and the Timberland Regional School Board, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Fiscal year 2023-2024, estimated increase $459,400. Fiscal year 2024-25, estimated increase $137,501. Fiscal year 25-26, estimated increase $135,723 for a 3-year total of $732,424. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $459,400 for the 2023-24 fiscal year. Such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salary and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at the current staffing levels. Majority vote required. Recommended by the school board, 7-0-0. Recommended by the budget committee, 7-0-0. I have a motion to place this on the ballot as written.
So moved.
I have a motion made and seconded. Did you want to speak on this briefly?
I will just briefly speak on it. This particular agreement is a result of a long negotiation. The reason you're seeing a difference in the first year of significantly higher than the other 2 years, this group has been without a raise for about, I believe, 4 years. So both parties, after long negotiations, came to terms, and I'm happy to say that we're trying to get this moved ahead so the people, the district, can support this.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Mr. LeBrecq.
With the decrease in students in the school system over several years apparently, and the outlook continuing to decrease maybe a little bit and then leveling off, how many positions have been eliminated, for lack of better terms, and if positions have been eliminated, why is the cost continually increasing significantly?
I'm going to allow the question on a cost item, although we can't amend it, but he can ask the question because we're here to debate and discuss. Does anybody want to answer his question? Yes, sir.
I'll do it in very broad strokes. I think you had said that you lived in the 3% world. These individuals have gone without any pay raises for the past 4 years, so the math is pretty simple. And when we looked around and we did our due diligence in looking at the equivalent pay grades for districts our size, not our size, experience levels for the various administrators, and essentially we were severely under-competitive, is a generous way to put that. And if we want to keep the best talent, if we want to attract new talent, this is a step we need to level up to what the competitive marketplace is offering.
So based on the increases of the dollars, what's the unwanted turnover been over the last couple of years?
I'm not certain what you mean by unwanted turnover, but circling back to a prior question with student enrollments, it has trended down over the past decade. It's starting to trend up, and we think that that will be leveling off. Again, certain towns, Sandown being one of them, is driving this slow incremental growth. I know from a prior meeting that I think we went back the past 8 or 10 years, this was at a BudCom meeting, I believe, policy and procedure. Anyway, as the number of students has gone down, the number of administrators and teachers has kept pace and gone down as well. It was referenced earlier, as individuals retire and the school population has gone down, those positions just weren't refilled. So the ratio to teachers and administrators is about the same as it was. So it is diminishing as the population diminishes as well.
There are also state minimum standards that we are obligated to meet with respect to ratios of administration to students for various positions, as there are for other positions as well as administration. As far as the number, Maria might be able to help us with the specific number, but I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but we are now Timberlane School District SAU 106. We withdrew from SAU 55, which also included Hampstead in addition to the 4 towns that we have. And in the process of that withdrawal, a number of administrative positions were eliminated from the Timberlane School District. Maria might be able to answer the specific number, but that was done in 2019-20,
Well,
going
with
into the
withdrawal-
2021 school year.
With the withdrawal, we did eliminate a minimum of 2 positions, but in addition to that, since my time on the board, I can think of at least 5 administrative positions that we've eliminated.
Okay, and the question about unwanted turnover is, how many people have left with, in an, I guess, exit interview indicating it was due to pay?
Yeah, we don't have that information available to us.
You don't ask questions when people leave?
No, we
Well,
don't
the
have
school
that
boards, we don't-
information available. Those are personnel, that's confidential information.
Well, I'm not asking about any specific individual. I don't know any specific individual, to be honest with you.
You just asked how many. That's a specific question.
How many people? I didn't say who.
Can I clarify? I think he's asking if you guys perform an exit.
It's fine. If you're not able to answer the question, that's fine. Thank you.
We don't have that information here.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kara Malo, 6 Washington Road. I'm going to use this as an opportunity just to say a few things. First, I just have a question in terms of that pay increase in relation to the teacher pay increase. Now, what is the percentage that indicates for administrators compared to what the teachers got for an increase? No? This is all new to me, so let's just talk.
This is apples and oranges.
Okay?
Okay?
It isn't for me though, so.
No, it is for us though.
Okay.
It's 2 different bargaining units.
Okay.
2 different sets of rules, 2 totally different groups. One has gone without a pay raise in negotiations, have not been able to come to terms with an agreement with us for 4 years.
So that's the administrative?
That's the administrators.
Okay.
They have received no pay increases, they've been status quo.
Mm-hmm.
We finally got
Okay.
an agreement now. As far as the teachers is concerned, again, we had a TA, their group voted it down. We went,
I'm not trying to open a can of worms, I'm
I'm
gonna
not
say some
opening
nice
up a can of
things.
worms.
So.
I'm not excuse us.
Can we let her talk? If you have something to say, you can approach the mic on the
Thank you.
cost items. Thank you.
We had a TA back in December. It was not agreed to. We went back to the board. We could not come to an agreement until very last minute where we offered the packet,
Okay.
what you see here for teachers.
Right,
I
so-
have a very passionate place, I'm gonna finish, where I come from. In terms of an educator of 17 years who worked throughout the COVID pandemic, I have 2 kids in this district. I have seen this district is going downhill. I feel very strongly about it. I think there hasn't been a big enough conversation about the educational piece, and I want to thank from the bottom of my heart the teachers in this district. And I'm not saying, and I know it has to do with the money. It has to do with the money. It does. And it's not that the administrators aren't doing great work too. I'm sure they are. I just want it to be, I think the education piece, I think the value the teachers bring to this school district and needs to be addressed, and I hope at some point will be reflective in the budget. And I also was planning on thanking the board members for your dedication to our children's education, because I've been more involved. I see the time and effort you all put into caring about our kids, which is super important. I don't have the time to dedicate it to doing it. So I want to add that in there as well. I'm not saying that the administrators don't have, and I think though that having not been teaching in the classroom, people need to take that into consideration, that we're living in a different time after the pandemic than we were. And I think that needs to be thought of, and I'm using this as the opportunity for everyone to realize that teachers are the place where it's coming from. They're dealing with it every day, they're living it every day, I lived it every day, and I moved on to making hopefully bigger changes. But I was curious on the budget increase, and I think it's fair. Everyone deserves to have increase and raise. But I want to just shout out to the teachers, so leaving it at that.
I'm going to go to Mr. Burns because you have a question? Can you say what town you were in, the last speaker? I'm going to go with Mr. Gurns because he has a cane. Mr. Gurns.
Yes, David Gurns, 3 Rolling Hill Avenue in Plastow. I respectfully request that the moderator see to it, or control that that we stick to the topic of the article that we're talking about. You know, we're going to talk about the teachers in a few minutes. And in all due respect to the previous speaker who was talking about, staffing levels and things like that, that's really beside the point of this article. And I really would
I appreciate your comments, but that last speaker was emotional and passionate, and I was about to tell her to stay only on the administrator's side, but then she finished. So, but I appreciate your comments.
Well, this is for future too.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Karen Steele, Atkinson.
Can you please not speak from your chair? Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Karen Steele, Atkinson. I know you just explained, and I understand that we can't, so I guess this is a point of question or order, we can't amend the collective bargaining agreements, but do we vote on them? And if not, how long will you allow discussion on each one before we move on to the next article?
Well, that's a good question, because normally in my last 10 years here, nobody's ever wanted to talk about a collective bargaining agreement that actually cannot be amended. But in our training as moderators, we're always told we need to be open and articles can be discussed even though they can't be amended. I've never had a discussion, so tonight's a first night for a lot of us, ma'am.
So that means we don't vote, right? You as the moderator will move us along when you see fit.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Name and address.
Amanda Knight, 32 Giordani Lane, Sandown. Just a quick question. How many people are in the Timberlane Administrators Union?
Does anybody know? How many people in this particular union?
It's right around 30 to 32, but our CFO is going to get you the number exactly.
And again, perhaps this is preempting your follow-up question. This is salaries and benefits, and as was stated earlier, in order to budget this out appropriately, we have to look at what the insurance rates are, and the max insurance rate we were given was 10.8%, is that correct? 10.6? I think it was 10.8%, so we have to...
That doesn't go in this part, that doesn't go, that's not part
I
of
believe
the
the number is 38.
38? Okay.
Yes.
And I guess, because I thought I knew what administrators were, and then I looked on the next one, and it said administrative assistants, and that's kind of what I was.
Our administrators are our principals, our vice principals.
Okay, thank you.
That group. And
Okay.
the administrative assistants are the secretaries. So that's a whole different group.
Okay.
This is just our principals right now.
Okay. And then this increase in salary and benefits, so this is, and then the taxes and all of that is all included in one, that's the one number.
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
So that's an average of $12,000 pay and benefits increase per person.
No.
Over 3 years.
Over 3 years.
I would like to speak in opposition to this. As a taxpayer in this town, I've seen we're just bleeding money, and there's no accountability. Despite dropping numbers in the school system, the school budget pretty much goes up every year. I think last year was the exception where the budget actually went down for 1 year. We can't keep doing this. You're going to push people out of this community, and I'm against this. Thank you.
No one else at the mic. Since this is non-amendable, Article 4 will appear on the ballot as written. Article 5, authorization for special meeting on cost items. Shall the voters of the school district, if Article 4 is defeated, authorize the Timberlane Regional School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 4, cost items only. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 7-0-0. So I have a motion to place this on the ballot as written.
So moved.
Second. And it's non-amendable, so I'm not, you wish to debate an article that we can't change whatsoever, it's provided by law?
No, I'm not debating. What happens if the voters vote that down and there's no special meeting and the salary increases are not voted for?
Then those people stay status quo. They don't get their salary increases.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on. Article 6, 3-year collective bargaining agreement, Timberlane Administrative Assistants, Secretaries, and Skilled Maintenance Union. Shall the voters of the school district approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Timberlane Administrative Assistants and Maintenance Union and the Timberlane Regional School Board, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Fiscal year 2023-24 estimated increase, $141,943. Fiscal year 24-25 estimated increase, $108,273. Fiscal year 2025-26 estimated increase, $99,195 for a 3-year total, $349,411. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $141,943 for the 2023-24 fiscal year. Such sum, representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at the current staffing levels. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 7-0-0, recommended by the budget committee, 7-0-0. Motion to place this on the ballot is written.
So moved.
A second? Thank you, both.
Okay, Article 6, it's for a different bargaining unit. I neglected to mention in the last article that this year, being my last year on the board, this is the first time that, because there were 4 different bargaining agreements, the entire board participated in all kinds of bargaining units. So, when previous years it was only 2 or 3 members of the board, but there's 9 members of this board, and I'd say pretty much everyone participated in all 4 of these units. So this is just for a 3-year agreement, and it's pretty much self-explanatory. So we, after several meetings, these are terms we came to terms with, and to move it forward to the warrant.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Amanda Knight, Sandown. How many people are in this union? There's a theme.
39.
Okay.
No one at the mics. Article 6 will appear on
I'm
the
at the
ballot
mic.
as written.
Well, I think the point being is that the previous article was an average of 12,000, and
Mr.
this
LeBrecq,
article
you
is an
weren't at the
average
mic
of
when I called.
36.
Said this is going on the ballot as written, so thank you, but I appreciate it.
Lower paid individuals, maybe we should vote for this for sure.
Article 7, non-amendable, authorization for special meeting on cost items. Shall the voters of the school district, if Article 6 is defeated, authorize the Timberlane Regional School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 6, cost items only, majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 7-0-0. Motion to place it on the ballot is written. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, so this has to appear as written because it's a language required by law. Moving on to Article 8. This is also collective bargaining. 3-year collective bargaining agreement, Timberlane Support Staff Union. Shall the voters of the school district approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Timberlane Support Staff Union and the Timberlane Regional School Board, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior year, fiscal year 2023-24. Estimated increase, $459,669. Fiscal year 24-25, estimated increase, $307,786. Fiscal year 2025-26, estimated increase, $293,841, for a 3-year total, $1,061,296. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $459,669 for the 23-24 fiscal year, said sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at the current staffing levels. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board 7-0-0, recommended by the budget committee 7-0-0. Motion to put it on the ballot is written.
So moved.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Anyone wish to discuss? Yes,
Again,
ma'am.
Just briefly.
We'll let Mr. Boyle make his presentation.
Again, this is a 3-year contract, the Timberlane Support Staff Union. So after a period of negotiations, this is the agreement we came to. So that's all I have to say from a school board
Thank you.
standpoint.
Yes, Ms. Knight.
How many people are in this union?
168.
168. And support staff, could you give me quick, who is that?
Paraeducators.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Lori Hirschman, TSSU president.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Name and address.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Laurie Hirschenroder, that is Herchenroder of Plastow.
Thank you.
Thank you. 28 Partridge Lane, Plastow, New Hampshire. Good evening, I am Laurie Hirschenroder of Plastow, President of the Timberlane Support Staff Union, TSSU. I am here tonight on behalf of TSSU to ask our voting public to please support our paraeducators with a yes vote on warrant articles 8 and 9. TSSU organized in 2013. We are proud union members of AFT, AFT New Hampshire, and AFL-CIO. Most of our members reside right here within our district. We are family members, friends, and neighbors dedicated to supporting the students of Timberlane. We are deeply invested in the betterment of our community. Paraeducators support students ranging in age from 3 through 22, academically, socially, and emotionally, under the guidance of teachers and administrators. We help ensure the safety and well-being of all students every day. We are vital members of the village our students need. When our last contract was graciously passed by voters of the district in March of 2020, we never could have foreseen what would occur in our world and the effect it would have on our public education system. A global pandemic intensified a critical shortage of paraeducators. Retaining and attracting quality paraeducators is more difficult now than it has ever been. This fact is proven in the district's recent decision to contract out some of our unfilled paraeducator positions for the remainder of this school year. What I publicly stated here 3 years ago applies even more today. It's no secret that the classroom we adults remember is vastly different now. Students' needs have dramatically increased. Safety concerns in our schools today are something none of us could have ever imagined would develop and continue. Safety of all students and staff should be at the forefront of every school. Academic expectations are constantly evolving and the demand for excellence is always increasing. For student safety, support, and success, we need quality paraeducators. The goal in negotiations was to settle a contract that was respectful both to taxpayers and paraeducators. TSSU believes this goal will be accomplished in passing this fair contract. Please support paraeducators. Please vote yes on warrant articles 8 and 9. Thank you.
Seeing no one at the mic, Article 8 will appear on the ballot as written. Moving on. Article 9, Authorization for special meeting on cost items. Shall the voters of the school district, if Article 8 is defeated, authorize the Timberlane Regional School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 8 cost items only. Majority vote required. Recommended by the school board, 7-0-0. Motion to place this on the ballot as written.
So moved.
Do you have a second? We have a motion made and seconded. This is by law, this language, so it will appear on the ballot as written. Moving on. Article 10, one-year collective bargaining agreement, Timberlane Teachers Association. Shall the voters of the school district approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Timberlane Teachers Association and the Timberlane Regional School Board, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Fiscal year 2023-24, estimated increase, $404,485. 1 year total, $404,485. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $404,485 for the 2023-24 fiscal year, which sum represents the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at the current staffing levels. Majority vote required. Recommended by the school board, 7-0-0. Recommended by the budget committee, 7-0-0. Motion to place this on the ballot is written.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion made and seconded. Do you wish to briefly speak on this, Mr. Board?
Yes, sir. This is a one-year agreement. As alluded to earlier by Sheila, the school board and the TTA were unable to reach full agreement on a 3-year contract. So what we came up with, recognizing we did not want to see the teachers go without anything, we came up with this amount, which they agreed to. This is an important article. I think this board wishes it was higher, but you have to be in these negotiations, I think, to really appreciate what goes on. Obviously, the TTA and the future school board will be back at it again next year, so hopefully it goes well.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I'll recognize you first.
Louis Broad. I'm the president of the Timberlane Teachers Association. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Timberlane Teachers Association represents the professionals that call Timberlane home. On behalf of them, we do want to earnestly thank all the members of the community that continue to support us. Before you, we have a simple 1-year contract. While the agreement does not make this district more competitive in recruiting quality educators, it does help Timberlane towards retaining experienced and qualified professionals that have made serving Timberlane their calling. I'm asking you to join us in supporting this 1-year agreement. It will stabilize the district so that we can move forward with the incoming board on negotiating a longer-term contract that makes Timberlane more competitive, respects the voters and taxpayers, and values the high-quality professionals of the district. For anyone who wants signs for their yard, please find one of our members. We'll hook you up. And to answer the question, 365 approximately teachers are represented by the CBA. 294, or 81%, belong to the union. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight?
Hi, William Smith, 24 Cottonwood Road, Plastow, New Hampshire. I appreciate the 1-year agreement. I wish it was longer for the teachers that are here. They are putting their lives at risk every day. I don't see anywhere in the budget articles some of the protections that probably they need during these times. And I think we all know what we're talking about. You have been underappreciated. And I want you to know you've made a difference in the lives of the students in Timberlane. I have a severely disabled son. The district, the para-educators, the teachers have worked to save this school district an immense amount of money by not outplacing my child and keeping him within the district. And he would certainly qualify for outplacement. You see, my son had cardiopulmonary arrest for 45 minutes. And yet these people have worked with him, and you know who you are. and it hasn't gone unappreciated. Your salary may look like you're unappreciated, but that is not all the picture is of what you do every day, and please hold that near and dear. I hope that these negotiations over the next 3-year contract can be amicable, that you are valued for what you have, for what you bring to the students in Timberlane each and every day, the energy that you bring. There's members here that have helped save my son's life, that are trained nurses who have called me to say, this doesn't look good. And to be able to say, that's my responsibility. I sent him to school so that you could see what we do at home every day, so you have a feeling of what we do every day. And that's my responsibility for sending him here today, but I will now bring him to the hospital. We are not paying these people nearly enough. And if you don't believe me, look south of the border 3 miles. Look what their pay chart looks like if you're looking. Look what the cost is to train an educator these days. Why are schools like UNH not having education programs nearly as full as they were? Well, because it costs about $35,000 a year to go, and now you need to get a master's degree. So $35,000 times 6, let's do some quick math, 210 grand. Let's not fool ourselves that we're going to be filling the high school, middle school, Pollard, Sandown, Danville with quality people soon. We're not, if we don't do something about it to reward what they do. They're not just teaching anymore. They're doing a lot more than they ever thought they would have to do. And many of them, I'm sure, are at their breaking point. But you have made a difference, and it is appreciated. So do not leave here this evening with the impression that what you do doesn't matter, because it does. And in my son's case, that TA, that nurse, that teacher may be the only friend that he has that day because he's different. He talks different. He acts different. But man, if you know my son, he's the happiest kid in the world. And I see that he brings that to you each and every day. I can't buy that. Double my taxes. I can't buy it. Get rid of an iPhone. Take what you need to take. I'll sacrifice some of those things so that these people feel like they're appreciated and they're wanted. I've written to Mr. Kellen many times. Have the tone be positive. We all want the same thing. We want to raise a citizenry who debates articles, who has disagreements, has different outlooks, but then can come together for a common good, which is what this town and this community and this regional school district is supposed to do. I'm over my 5 minutes,
You are.
and I apologize.
I'll let you go. That's all right. Thank you. See nobody else at the mic. Article 10 will appear on the ballot as written. Article 11. Authorization for special meeting on cost items. Shall the voters of the school district, if Article 10 is defeated, authorize the Timberlane Regional School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 10 cost items only. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board 700. Motion to put this on the ballot as written.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion made and seconded. By law, this is the language. Article 11 will appear on the ballot as written. Moving on. Article 12, Capital Reserve Fund by surplus. Yes, ma'am.
With regards to Article 11, because I just sat down for Article 10 before you went, but it's related.
I don't understand your question, ma'am. Article 11 has to go on the ballot the way it's written and...
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I do have a lot of issues and reservations about the cost of this school district, and I'm not in favor of doubling. That sounds scary, but I do support the unions. I do support our employees, and I do hope that they are well taken care of. That is non-negotiable for me. So
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garrity.
Jim Garrity from 14 East Road, Atkinson. Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict reconsideration on Articles 4 through 11.
I have a motion made and seconded by Ms. Savage to restrict reconsideration Articles 4 through 11 inclusive. Made and seconded. All in favor of restricting reconsideration 4 through 11 signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Article 12. Capital Reserve Fund by surplus. Shall the voters of the school district raise and appropriate up to $250,000 to be placed in the school building construction, reconstruction, capital improvement, and land purchase capital reserve fund established in 1996, with such amount to be transferred from those funds in June 30, 2023 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, which were apportioned as capital expenses in 2022-2023 in accordance with Article 6 of the Timberlane Regional School District Articles of Agreement. No amount to be raised by additional taxation, majority vote required, recommended by the school board 7-0-0, recommended by the budget committee 7-0-0. Motion to put Article 12 on the ballot is written.
So moved.
And I have a second. We have a motion made and seconded. Who wishes to speak on this?
Let's give it briefly. This is pretty much, this appears annually on your ballot. And it's almost like a housekeeping thing that we should be, as far as I'm concerned, should be even higher than this, but the key to this thing is there's no additional taxes being raised here. So if anyone has any questions about that.
Yes, sir.
What's the balance of the fund currently?
It's a little over $1 million currently.
Okay, so this should raise it to 1.25 million?
No, it does not. If there's any unexpended capital money in the budget at the end of the fiscal year, that money, up to $250,000, would be placed in the capital reserve fund. We have been spending that money almost nearly down to what it should be, because if we're raising and appropriating money for capital projects, we're using it now. The reason there was money in that fund was previous boards or just administrations were not spending the capital reserve funds, and they were going back into that particular reserve fund, which actually is not a good thing. You should spend the money that's in your budget on an annual basis for repair and maintenance and capital improvements.
So only at the end of the year, if there's surplus, 250,000 of that surplus would go into this capital reserve fund?
Correct. I wouldn't consider, if there's still money remaining, there's certain lines that are designated as capital lines.
Okay, so it's just remaining in those capital lines?
Correct.
Not the overall budget?
Correct. And I don't know, Maria, was it like 20 or 30,000 usually? I mean, it's almost impossible to spend it exactly down to zero.
Yeah, well, 12,000, 6,000, 30,000, it depends.
Okay.
I can probably be a report.
I'm not completely following, but that's okay.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Speak after. Last year, how much was contributed of the 250,000?
I'm sorry?
How much did you put in last year?
Nothing.
Nothing.
We spent, I think we had $6,200 left in the capital line.
Okay.
Or something, yeah.
I was looking to raise the amount, so clearly
I'm
that's
sorry?
not.
Yeah, we didn't do any transfer. We didn't transfer any money last year, or the year before. I've only been here for 2 years, so we have not transferred.
Are we forecasting that we'll have less than 250,000 again?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Because right now the capital money, is being spent, everything in the capital fund, because we have so many things that need to be.
My motion to increase would be moved then, so.
Point of order. Should that be just appropriate, not raise and appropriate?
That's just appropriate.
No, it's raise and appropriate.
Raise and
That's the language that we always use. I'm sure we ran that by council.
Likely went to the DOR too, probably for their review.
That's DRA language, so I wouldn't change it.
Nobody at the mic. Article 12 will appear on the ballot as written. Article 13, general acceptance of reports. Housekeeping. Shall the voters of the school district accept reports of agents, auditors, and committees as written in the 2022 annual report? Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 700. Motion to place that on the ballot as written.
So moved.
Second? I have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the reports? Hearing none, Article 13 will appear on the ballot as written. Moving on. Article 14, Emergency Contingency Fund. Shall the school district establish a contingency fund for the upcoming fiscal year for the purpose of covering the cost of unpredictable cost escalations, as well as emergencies, and further raise and appropriate $500,000 with such amount to be transferred from those funds in the June 30, 2023 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year. No amount to be raised by additional taxation. Any appropriation left in the fund at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund and used to offset the local education property tax rate. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 700. Recommended by the budget committee, 700. Motion to put this on the ballot as written.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion made and seconded. Yes, Ms. Knight?
So I'm on the budget committee for my town, and I am new to this whole process, and I always thought it was strange that we didn't have some kind of fund for emergencies, but then they said that we can't have a rainy day fund. Why is this not already a thing?
Mr. O'Shaughnessy, do you want to try to answer that?
All right, so towns actually can have a contingency fund by statute. They don't require legislative body approval. And school districts can ask the legislative body each year to approve a certain dollar amount to put into a contingency fund, which is what this article is doing. So without asking the voters, they can't do it. So that's why this article is here. There's another article on the warrant that actually it makes sense to talk about now to some degree, but it actually asks the voters here to authorize, or the voters in March to authorize the school board to retain fund balance to set up a contingency fund in future years, which would mean that they wouldn't have to continually come back every year and ask for permission to set up a contingency fund. The voters would just be authorizing them to do it every year automatically.
Okay, and so I guess I don't know how to frame my question, so I'll...
Mr. LeBrun.
How much of the, I assume this was a $500,000 fund last year? Is that correct? How much was the fund last year? So there was no emergency fund voted on last year?
No, this is a one-time emergency fund that we're proposing. And the difference between this, because I know some people had this question, the difference between this and the 2% retained fund is that this will give the voters the opportunity to vote to form this one-time fund of $500,000. And it's just for emergencies. It doesn't have a tax impact. It will come out from the fund balance. And if it's not used, it will go back to taxpayers for tax rates.
So how have emergencies been handled prior to having an emergency contingency fund?
So the board has the authority to retain up to 2.5% for any emergency or any need that the district has. Again, the board can do that. The thought behind doing it this way is to give the voters the opportunity to have a voice in this one-time fund that we are proposing because, as you all know, prices are going above and beyond what we can expect. I mean, if you go to a grocery store right now and buy a carton of eggs, it's $7, and 2 months ago it was $3.50. So we don't know what to expect. So it's just an emergency fund. Again, if it doesn't get spent, it goes back to the taxpayers.
Right, in my house, I just don't buy something else, but besides the point, the current budget includes some projections for cost escalations, I assume?
The ones that are allowed by the law.
In other words, the budgeted line items have some money in there. You're expecting things to cost more, so in the current budget, you've increased the budget with that expectation of things to cost more, like fuel, like paper, like whatever.
In the proposed budget, yes, we have some assumptions. In the default budget, you cannot have anything that you contract. Well, the proposed budget, yes, but the default budget, no, because it's just a budget that was elaborated 2 years ago. And it's just what cost items were 2 years ago.
So the 2.5%, the 2.5% of what? That the board can...
Of the unreserved fund balance at the end of the year.
Of the unassigned fund balance.
The surplus at the end of the year.
Okay.
So say we have an $80 million budget, and we spend all of it, except for $2 million. The board can retain up to 2.5% of the total operating budget. So if it's 80 million, I don't know what's 2.5% of that, 1.6 million, about 1.8 million. They could retain that. So if we have 2 million left, you could say we could retain 1.8 million. We don't usually do that because we try to give as much back to the taxpayers as we can to offset the tax rate for the coming year.
So if this article is passed, does that change your ability to also retain 2.5% in addition to the 500,000?
No, not at all. This is a one-time, $500,000 fund.
Right, so theoretically, you could get this 500 and you could also retain 2.5% if decided to. Correct?
We could, yeah, no, that, I don't think the board will do that because like Dr. Farah just said, they have not authorized that because they always try to give them out as much as they can to the taxpayers.
So we could reword this to basically say that by passing this, we're also agreeing to eliminate the ability of the board to retain the 2.5%.
No, that cannot be eliminated. And like I said at the beginning of my statement, the difference between this and the 2.5 is that in this one, the voters will have the opportunity to vote for it or not vote for it. In the 2.5 is at the discretion of the board. So
right, but if the board needed it, they'd use it. So I don't think this is needed at all because there is a method to fund contingencies if needed, and that's by the 2.5%.
Not if the default budget were to pass and we ran our budget down to almost zero and we had an emergency, there's no more money left. We only have an unassigned fund balance to save if there's something to save, but we could be in a position, especially if the default budget passes, where we don't have the money. And then you'd have to have another special meeting and go back to the voters.
So you don't really have confidence in your budget passing?
We have two budgets, right? We have two budgets. One is the default budget, which is a budget that was created 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And we have the proposed budget, which is the budget that we all collectively created based on the needs of our students, our staff, and our district. If we end up with a 2-year-old budget, I can guarantee you that we not have enough to run this district for a year with a 2-year-old budget.
So we're anticipating the default budget passing, therefore we need a $500,000 contingency fund as well.
Do you put on your seatbelt?
We're not talking here,
Absolutely.
excuse me, you're off record. We're not talking the default budget here. We're talking this article, and you've exceeded your time, and we had 2 people standing at the mic, so I'd ask you to let your friend speak.
They may speak, and thank you.
I just had a quick question. You were saying that if there was unassigned funds, those would go back to the taxpayers. When's the last time that happened?
Every year.
Every year? I thought there was a warrant article that went back into the capital reserve.
No.
Millions
No.
go back to the taxpayers every year.
Millions.
This year was 3.6 million.
So what, the budget last year was how much?
75.
75, and then there's a $3 million excess,
That went back to the taxpayers.
and we're looking to increase it to 81 million. Is that
Well,
correct?
you have to keep in mind that last year we got a lot of COVID relief money. So that changed the.
So last year
the
the COVID money was the exception to the rule, basically, is what you're saying.
The last 2 years, we had gotten unexpected money between COVID and additional adequacy aid that the state gave us. So you have to keep that into consideration for the
Yeah,
last
so
2 years.
prior to the last 2 years, when was, before that, what was the return on that?
About 2 million. It has changed between 1 and 2 million.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
Just have two comments. One, I came from Newton, where we had the default or budget, and the roof caved in on the school. So guess what? There wasn't a whole lot of money, and we had to move sixth graders to the high school. So it does happen, and we need to plan for it. And lastly, can we call the question, please?
So if you sit down, then I can call it, because there's nobody else with the mic. So nobody else, oh, we have a mic. Oh,
I know.
you don't want this question to go forward?
I know you
Okay.
do. So, just for Mr. Lebrecht's and Mr. Pelletier's clarification on, have we ever had to do something with the funds? When I was on the school board, Mr. Woodworth, I'm gonna call you in to help me out a little, and any school board member who was on the board, we had to freeze funds minus what we absolutely had to pay for salary and needs, because a well in a septic system, the septic went at the high school, and we did not have the funds, and we had to freeze everything but what we needed to. So this warrant article, I 100% agree with, because that there was no rainy day fund, because we can't have a rainy day fund. Like you said, you give something up. We had to give some stuff up that year. So, and it was a struggle as we sat on the board. So, you know, some of these things, they're putting them in because our buildings are so fragile. Thank you.
We all have to give some things up, but regardless of that, if we're running a $2 million to $3.5 million budget surplus every year, then why do we keep increasing our budgets to the levels that we're increasing them?
Because costs keep going up.
Are you aware? Can you not speak from the floor? If you want to speak, get up and get to the mic, please. I don't want to yelling back and forth in a debate. You asked the question, it's a legitimate question. Why does cost? Somebody want to answer that at a mic?
May I say
Yes.
something?
Todd, go
So,
ahead.
so a lot of people like to compare things to how they budget in their home. We're budgeting for 18 months out. So things happen over 18 months. People leave the district, people come into the district. The GMR rate might get lower, might be higher. So things fluctuate. We're voting in March, but the fiscal year doesn't actually start until July, and it doesn't end until June of 2024. So to come in with some kind of a surplus at the end of a $76 or an $80 million budget that's very small in a percentage would be the equivalent in somebody's home example, for example, of spending every dime you have and having maybe 10 bucks left at the end. So that is why we traditionally have surpluses, and then that goes back to the taxpayers to offset the tax rate for the next year.
But
So
if you see a
it would be
trend where
impossible
you're
to spend
trending
it all
2
the way
million,
down, and we wouldn't want that. It wouldn't be prudent budgeting.
if you have a trend of $2 million surplus every single year, then that's a trend. So maybe reduce the budget by $1 million, and you'll only have $1 million surplus, and you'll still have some additional contingency in addition to this. You've
Right,
got
or we fill
other
every
funds.
position, and then we don't have enough money to pay the payroll for all of the teachers.
We'll figure it out. I figure it out. You figure it out at home, right? We all figure it out.
I think the speaker at the mic asked the question, it
and
was
the point is
answered,
it's-
and I'm not really a fan of this debate back and forth. All questions should come to me, but I'm letting you guys talk because it's an open house, but I think his question's answered. Yes, sir.
So you had asked earlier, it's approximately 2%. So if you could, with your own home, forecast out 18 months in the future what your outlays would be. And again, remember, a lot of these outlays are required by law. We don't have an option about them. Can you predict with any certainty what your cable bill will be 18 months from now?
Yes.
What your cell
0.
phone bill will be? What
I
your
don't
cell
have
phone
cable.
bill? What your car insurance will bill? How much a gallon of gasoline to get to work will be? These are some of the things
Work
that...
from home. I have no cable, I work from home.
You take my point. You take my point.
Debate. Yes, sir.
Mark Ward, Plastow, New Hampshire, 3 Shannon Lane. I'd like to call a vote, please.
I had a man standing at the mic. He waived his time to let you speak, but I think I have to let him speak. Our rules say if he's at the mic, I can let him speak before I go to the call of the question. On this article only. Yes, sir.
Yes, it was just a question. There is a mechanism if there is an issue, correct? You could call a special warrant or a special election. If something arose that needed to be attended to, you could actually do it that way. You don't need to build this in. If an issue arises, like a roof collapses, you could call a special, I don't know what the correct term would be, special election or special warrant article or whatever, special meeting to resolve that. That is correct? Thank you.
Nobody at the mic. I'm calling this. Article 14 will appear on the ballot as written. Article 15, fund balance retention. Shall the school district vote to authorize indefinitely until rescinded to retain year-end unassigned general funds in an amount not to exceed, in any fiscal year, 5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment in accordance with RSA 198:4 small b Roman 2. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board 610. Recommended by the Budget Committee 700. Motion to put this on the ballot as written.
So moved.
Second? Made and seconded. Do you wish to speak to this, Mr. Board? No?
I do not wish to speak.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak? I see Mr. LeBrecq.
I'd like to propose amendment to reduce to 0%.
Article 15, I have a motion by Mr. LeBrecq to amend the percentage, which does set forth now 5%. He wishes to amend it to 0%. Do I have a second? Mr. Pelletier raised his hand. He's seconding. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Nay. Motion failed. Seeing nobody at the mic, Article 15 will appear on the ballot as written. And the last article, 16. But in the event you all take off after 16, I wanted to draw your attention, if you got the pamphlets when you came in, where you're voting. It's the last 2 pages of the pamphlet. Talks about the voting hours. Don't forget to vote. It sets forth, as I mentioned in the beginning, all the voting hours and places and times. Please again note, Plastow changed its place and time. And after this meeting, the Timberlane Regional School Board will meet following this session to finalize any recommendation actions for the official ballot. And the Timberlane Regional Budget Committee will meet following this session to finalize any recommendation action for the official ballot. Last article, Article 6.
No, go ahead.
Article 16, use of capital reserve fund. Shall the voters of the school district appropriate the sum of $950,000 to repair, maintain, improve, or replace the school's boilers and related facilities, to authorize the district to withdraw the sum of $950,000 from the existing school building construction, reconstruction, capital improvements, and land purchase capital reserve fund. No amount to be raised by additional taxation. Majority vote required, recommended by the school board, 700. Recommended by the budget committee, 700. Motion to put this on the ballot is written.
So moved.
Second? I have a motion made and seconded.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
very briefly, it was mentioned earlier in the meeting tonight. We're trying to put money into our facilities. We're long overdue here. We have over $1 million in this reserve fund right now. We're asking the voters to take $950,000 out of that to immediately put this into the high school boilers and related facilities. So we have the money there. We want the ability to use it, and that's about it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Are the high school boilers and associated facilities included within the lease purchase agreement?
No, they're not included in the 25 million.
No, they're not the 25 million.
No.
Okay. I would like to see how I frame this. Is there possibility to study improvements to the high school athletic fields, including but not limited to artificial turf installation and a new track?
Different subject matter?
I believe it's a different subject matter.
Okay. No, fair enough. I'm going to try anytime I can.
Yes, sir.
Seems with structural repairs needed, we don't need turf, but that's just me. $950,000, what's currently wrong with the boilers? How old are the boilers? What's the justification? Just, can you speak to that quickly, about their current condition, operating capacity? Are they breaking down regularly, et cetera, et cetera?
We're going to let our head of facilities take
We have a speaker approaching the mic who
Sure.
can answer your question.
This is Mr. Carl Inglesby, our Director of Plant Operations.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. To answer your question, the boilers right now, we have 8 Areco boilers in the high school. The two newest ones were put in 2004. The rest were put in 1997, so they were about 35 years old to 20 years old. And as far as their shape, we only have 4 running right now. Does that answer your question? It is, if one of those goes down, we will not be heating the high school. And to be honest with you, the HVAC systems and everything are over 20 years old, so everything is kind of cool in the schools. We have one room an HVAC unit that's running at 100% open hot water, and it's only putting out about 65-degree air, so the rooms are cold. Radiators are working, but we have single pane glass in the building, so it's not really keeping up with the needs for the schools. That's in the entire building, middle school and high school. The middle school just got new boilers. We just put in new windows. We've addressed the HVAC systems over there getting upgraded. We're going to try to do with the funds, not just the funds that we're raising with the 25 million, we're also doing capital improvements. We're doing controls. We're looking at boilers at other schools. What you see in that $25 million isn't the only thing we've been doing. We've been really addressing a lot of the major issues. We talked about the structural integrity. I'm sorry if I'm taking too much of your time. But the structural integrity of some of the walls, they're falling apart. Water's, I wouldn't say falling apart, but water's infiltrating, and it's been infiltrating since at least 2012 from the reports I've read. I've only been here in a year and a half. So instead of putting the $25 million up and putting the study of those walls into that $25 million, we're taking it out of our capital improvement funds that we have in the district that we get. They talk about the $1 million every year. This is what we're doing. We're really digging hard to find as much money as we can to do as much good as we can in these buildings. And if you have any questions, please come see me and talk to me in my office. Let's walk the buildings. Don't wait till we have 150 people here so you can get up and talk to these people. You know, come see me. Thank you.
Jack?
My question was really going to be for you. Come on down. Come on down.
If you'll take a question.
So we're going to put $1 million into the boilers, well needed. How are we going to coordinate that with the single pane glass? Because what I hate to do is get up and efficient and save all this money with the boilers and then blow it out the walls.
How much money can I go for? $25 million was the limit that we decided
Hey,
on.
shut that down. I was going to give you another $5.
Thank you, Jack. As you see, we have $120 million worth of identified items that need to be done. 116, I think it's at right now. It changes every day. Costs of everything change every day. But we have looked at the windows in the high school. We already changed them in the middle school. It only makes sense that you start to make your buildings more warm, but we had to take care of some other issues before we address the windows. They are on the list, but they're not on the $25 million list. Any other questions while I'm here?
Mr. LeBrook? Can you please not
Not now.
talk from your seat, Jack? Thanks. Wouldn't be a day without me having to tell you. Mr. LeBrook?
So just a response, again, I'm just confused why we are not targeting fixing structural leaking walls in advance of the other $25 million in projects. I know we're funding a study, but how are we going to pay for those repairs if we're not targeting it in the $25 million? That's why I believe that is primarily a
We're not on the
faulty.
$25 million, we're in the $950, Mr. LeBrook.
He's talking about the $25 million too, so I can as well. In any case, it should be part of that amount. If that's a needed repair immediately, why wasn't that a priority project in the $25 million?
Because we don't know what we need with those buildings. We have to do a study on it first. We have to do our due diligence to find out what's actually wrong with those walls. Thank you.
Thank you. You sure? Okay, go ahead. I was until you raised your hand, but thank you. So seeing nobody at the mic, saying that will appear in the ballot as written, I want to thank you all for your patience tonight and for being a good crowd at the deliberative session. And we'll hope you all go to the polls on March 14th. I'm going to declare this deliberative session closed.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. You got me, AD? Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to say thank you to our Budget Committee for all of their hard work. Thank you to our school board for all of their hard work. And thank you for all of you coming out tonight. We appreciate it.